Section 1. The Grand Cañon of the Colorado. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Rebecca Eden Walker. The Grand Cañon of the Colorado by John Muir. 1902. Happy nowadays is the tourist, with earth's wonders, new and old, spread invitingly open before him, and a host of able workers as his slaves, making everything easy, patting plush about him, grading roads for him, boring tunnels, moving hills out of his way, eager, like the devil, to show him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory and foolishness, spiritualizing travel for him with lightning and steam, abolishing space and time and almost everything else. Little children and tender pulpy people, as well as storm-seasoned explorers, may now go almost everywhere in smooth comfort, cross oceans and deserts scarce accessible to fishes and birds, and dragged by steel horses go up high mountains, riding gloriously beneath starry showers of sparks, ascending like Elijah in a whirlwind and chariot of fire. First of the wonders of the Great West to be brought within the reach of the tourist were the Yosemite and the Big Trees, on the completion of the first transcontinental railway. Next came the Yellowstone and icy Alaska by the northern roads, and last the Grand Cañon of the Colorado, which, naturally the hardest to reach, has now become, by a branch of the Santa Fe, the most accessible of all. Of course, with this wonderful extension of steel ways through our wilderness, there is loss as well as gain. Nearly all railroads are bordered by belts of desolation. The finest wilderness perishes, as if stricken with pestilence. Bird and beast people, if not the dryads, are frightened from the groves. Too often the groves also vanish, leaving nothing but ashes. Fortunately, nature has a few big places beyond man's power to spoil: the ocean, the two icy ends of the globe, and the Grand Cañon. When I first heard of the Santa Fe trains running to the edge of the Grand Cañon of Arizona, I was troubled with thoughts of the disenchantment likely to follow. But last winter, when I saw those trains crawling along through the pines of the Coconini Forest, and close up to the brink of the chasm at Bright Angel, I was glad to discover that in the presence of such stupendous scenery, they are nothing. The locomotives and trains are mere beetles and caterpillars, and the noise they make is as little disturbing as the hooting of an owl in the lonely woods. In a dry, hot, monotonous forested plateau, seemingly boundless, you come suddenly and without warning upon the abrupt edge of a gigantic sunken landscape of the wildest, most multitudinous features. And those features, sharp and angular, are made out of flat beds of limestone and sandstone, forming a spiry, jagged, gloriously colored mountain range countersunk in a level gray plain. It is a hard job to sketch it, even in scrawniest outline, and try as I may, not in the least sparing myself, I cannot tell the 100th part of the wonders of its features. The side canyons, gorges, alcoves, cloisters, and amphitheaters of vast sweep and depth carved in its magnificent walls. The throng of great architectural rocks it contains, resembling castles, cathedrals, temples, and palaces, towered and spired and painted, some of them nearly a mile high, yet beneath one's feet. All this, however, is less difficult than to give any idea of the impression of wild primeval beauty and power one receives in merely gazing from its brink. The view down the gulf of color and over the rim of its wonderful wall, more than any other view I know, leads us to think of our earth as a star within stars swimming in light, every radiant spire pointing the way to the heavens. but it is impossible to conceive what the canyon is, or what impression it makes from descriptions or pictures, however good. Naturally, it is untellable, even to those who have seen something perhaps a little like it on a small scale in this same plateau region. One's most extravagant expectations are indefinitely surpassed, though one expect much from what is said of it as the biggest chasm on earth. So big is it that all other big things, Yosemite, the Yellowstone, the pyramids, Chicago, all would be lost if tumbled into it. Naturally enough, illustrations as to size are sought for among other canyons, like or unlike it, with the common result of worse confounding confusion. The prudent keep silent. It was once said that the Grand Cañon could put a dozen Yosemites in its vest pocket. The justly famous Grand Cañon of the Yellowstone is, like the Colorado, gorgeously colored and abruptly countersunk in a plateau, and both are mainly the work of water. But the Colorado's canyon is more than 1,000 times larger, and as a score or two new buildings of ordinary size would not appreciably change the general view of a great city, so hundreds of Yellowstones might be eroded in the sides of the Colorado Canyon without noticeably augmenting its size or the richness of its sculpture. But it is not true that the great Yosemite rocks would be thus lost or hidden. Nothing of their kind in the world, so far as I know, rivals El Capitan and Tissiac, much less dwarfs or in any way belittles them. None of the sandstone or limestone precipices of the canyon that I have seen or heard of approaches in smooth, flawless strength and grandeur the granite face of El Capitan or the Tenaya side of Cloud's Rest. These colossal cliffs, types of permanence, are about 3,000 and 6,000 feet high. Those of the canyon that are sheer are about half as high, and are types of fleeting change, while gloriously domed Tissiac, noblest of mountain buildings, far from being overshadowed or lost in this rosy, spiry canyon company, would draw every eye, and in serene majesty, aboon the May, she would take her place, castle, temple, palace, or tower. Nevertheless, a noted writer, comparing the Grand Cañon in a general way with the glacial Yosemite, says, "And the Yosemite, ah, the lovely Yosemite, dumped down into the wilderness of gorges and mountains, it would take a guide who knew of its existence a long time to find it." This is striking, and shows up well above the levels of commonplace description, but it is confusing, and has the fatal fault of not being true. As well try to describe an eagle by putting a lark in it. And the lark, ah, the lovely lark, dumped down the red royal gorge of the eagle, it would be hard to find. Each in its own place is better, singing at heaven's gate and sailing the sky with the clouds. Every feature of nature's big face is beautiful, height and hollow, wrinkle, furrow, and line. And this is the main master furrow of its kind on our continent, incomparably greater and more impressive than any other yet discovered, or likely to be discovered, now that all the great rivers have been traced to their heads. The Colorado River rises in the heart of the continent, on the dividing ranges and ridges between the two oceans, drains thousands of snowy mountains, through narrow or spacious valleys, and thence through canyons of every color, sheer-walled and deep, all of which seem to be represented in this one Grand Cañon of canyons. End of section 1. Section 2 of The Grand Cañon of the Colorado by John Muir. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. It is very hard to give anything like an adequate conception of its size. Much more of its color, its vast wall sculpture, the wealth of ornate architectural buildings that fill it, or, most of all, the tremendous impression it makes. According to Major Powell, it is about 217 miles long, from 5 to 15 miles wide from rim to rim, and from about 5,000 to 6,000 feet deep. So tremendous a chasm would be one of the world's greatest wonders, even if, like ordinary canyons cut in sedimentary rocks, it were empty and its walls were simple. But instead of being plain, the walls are so deeply and elaborately carved into all sorts of recesses, alcoves, cirques, amphitheaters, and side canyons that were you to trace the rim closely around on both sides, your journey would be nearly 1,000 miles long. Into all these recesses the level, continuous beds of rocks in ledges and benches, with their various colors, run like broad ribbons, marvelously beautiful and effective, even at a distance of 10 or 12 miles. And the vast space these glorious walls enclose, instead of being empty, is crowded with gigantic architectural rock forms, gorgeously colored and adorned with towers and spires like works of art. Looking down from this level plateau, we are more impressed with the feeling of being on top of everything than when looking from the summit of a mountain. From side to side of the vast gulf, temples, palaces, towers, and spires come soaring up in thick array, half a mile or nearly a mile above their sunken hidden bases, some to a level within our standpoint, but none higher. And in the inspiring morning light, all are so fresh and rosy looking that they seem newborn, as if, like the quick-growing crimson snow plants of the California woods, they had just sprung up, hatched by the warm, brooding, motherly weather. In trying to describe the great pines and sequoias of the Sierra, I have often thought that if one of those trees could be set by itself in some city park, its grandeur there might be impressively realized, while in its home forest, where all magnitudes are great, the weary, satiated traveler sees none of them truly. It is so with these majestic rock structures. Though mere residual masses of the plateau, they are dowered with the grandeur and repose of mountains. Together with the finely chiseled carvings and modeling of man's temples and palaces, and often, to a considerable extent, with their symmetry, some, closely observed, look like ruins, but even those stand plumb and true, and show architectural forms loaded with lines strictly regular and decorative, and all are arrayed in colors that storms and time seem only to brighten. They are not placed in regular rows in line with the river, but "athro'ither," as the Scotch say, in lavish, exuberant crowds, as if nature, in wildest extravagance, held her bravest structures as common as gravel piles. Yonder stands a spiry cathedral, nearly 5,000 feet in height, nobly symmetrical, with sheer buttressed walls and arched doorways and windows, as richly finished and decorated with sculptures as the great rock temples of India or Egypt. Beside it rises a huge castle, with arched gateway, turrets, watchtowers, ramparts, etc., and to the right and left, palaces, obelisks, and pyramids fairly fill the gulf, all colossal and all lavishly painted and carved. Here and there a flat-topped structure may be seen, or one imperfectly domed, but the prevailing style is ornate Gothic, with many hints of Egyptian and Indian. Throughout this vast extent of wild architecture, nature's own capital city, there is to be no ordinary dwellings. All look like grand and important public structures, except perhaps some of the low pyramids, broad-based and sharp-pointed, covered with down-flowing talus like loosely set tents with hollow, sagging sides. The roofs often have disintegrated rocks heaped and draggled over them, but in the main the masonry is firm and laid in regular courses, as if done by square and rule. Nevertheless, they are ever changing. Their tops are now a dome, now a flat table or spire, as harder or softer strata are reached in their slow degradation, while the sides, with all their fine moldings, are being steadily undermined and eaten away. But no essential change in style or color is thus effected. From century to century, they stand the same. What seems confusion among the rough earthquake-shaken crags nearest one comes to order as soon as the main plan of the various structures appear. Every building, however complicated and laden with ornamental lines, is at one with itself and every one of its neighbors. For the same characteristic controlling belts of color and solid strata extend with wonderful constancy for very great distances, and pass through and give style to thousands of separate structures, however their smaller characters may be. Of all the various kinds of ornamental work displayed, carving, tracery on cliff faces, moldings, arches, pinnacles, none is more admirably effective or charms more than the webs of rain-channeled taluses, marvelously extensive, without the slightest appearance of waste or excess. They cover roofs and dome tops and the base of every cliff, belt each spire and pyramid and massy, towering temple, and in beautiful continuous lines go sweeping along the great walls, in and out, around all the intricate systems of side canyons, amphitheaters, cirques, and scallops into which they are sculptured. From one point, hundreds of miles of this fairy embroidery may be traced. It is all so fine and orderly that it would seem that not only had the clouds and streams been kept harmoniously busy in the making of it, but that every raindrop sent like a bullet to a mark had been the subject of a separate thought. So sure is the outcome of beauty throughout the stormy centuries. Surely nowhere else are there illustrations so striking of the natural beauty of desolation and death. So many of nature's own mountain buildings wasting in glory of high desert air, going to dust. See how steadfast in beauty they all are in their going. Look again and again how the rough, dusty boulders and sand of disintegration from the upper ledges wreathe in beauty the next and the next below with these wonderful taluses, and how the colors are finer the faster the waste. We oftentimes see nature giving beauty for ashes, as in the flowers of a prairie after fire. But here the very dust and ashes are beautiful. Gazing across the mighty chasm, we at last discover that it is not its great depth, nor length, nor yet these wonderful buildings that most impresses us. It is its immense width, sharply defined by precipitous walls plunging suddenly down from a flat plain, declaring in terms instantly apprehended that the vast gulf is a gash in the once unbroken plateau, made by slow, orderly erosion and removal of huge beds of rocks. Other valleys of erosion are as great. In all their dimensions, some are greater, but none of these produces an effect on the imagination at once so quick and profound, coming without study, given at a glance. Therefore, by far the greatest and most influential feature of this view from Bright Angel or any other of the canyon views is the opposite wall. Of the one beneath our feet, we see only fragmentary sections in cirques and amphitheaters, and on the sides of the outjutting promontories between them, while the other, though far distant, is beheld in all its glory of color and noble proportions. the one supreme beauty and wonder to which the eye is ever turning. For while charming with its beauty, it tells the story of the stupendous erosion of the canyon, the foundation of the unspeakable impression made on everybody. It seems a gigantic statement for even nature to make, all in one mighty stone word, apprehended at once like a burst of light, celestial color its natural vesture, coming in glory to mind and heart, as to a home prepared for it from the very beginning. Wildness so godful, cosmic, primeval, bestows a new sense of earth's beauty and size. Not even from high mountains does the world seem so wide, so like a star in glory of light on its way through the heavens. End of section 2. Section 3 of The Grand Cañon of the Colorado by John Muir. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. I have observed scenery hunters of all sorts getting first views of Yosemite's glaciers, while mountain ranges, etc., mixed with the enthusiasm which such scenery naturally excites, there is often weak gushing, and many splutter aloud like little waterfalls. Here, for a few moments at least, there is silence, and all are in dead earnest, as if awed and hushed by an earthquake, perhaps until the cook cries, "Breakfast!" or the stable boy, "Horses are ready!" Then the poor unfortunates, slaves of regular habits, turn quickly away, gasping and muttering, as if wondering where they had been and what had enchanted them. Roads have been made from Bright Angel Hotel through the Coconini Forest to the ends of outstanding promontories, commanding extensive views up and down the canyon. The nearest of them, 3 or 4 miles east and west, are McNeil's Point and Rose Point. The latter, besides commanding the eternally interesting canyon, gives wide sweeping views southeast and west over the dark forest roof to the San Francisco and Mount Trumbull volcanoes, the bluest of mountains over the blackest of level woods. Instead of thus riding in the dust with the crowd, more will be gained by going quietly afoot along the rim at different times of day and night, free to observe the vegetation, the fossils in the rocks, the seams beneath overhanging ledges once inhabited by Indians, and to watch the stupendous scenery in the changing lights and shadows, clouds, showers, and storms. One need not go hunting the so-called points of interest. The verge anywhere, everywhere, is a point of interest beyond one's wildest dreams. As yet, few of the promontories or throng of mountain buildings in the canyon are named, nor among such exuberance of forms are names thought of by the bewildered, hurried tourist. He would be as likely to think of names for waves in a storm. The eastern and western cloisters, Hindu Amphitheater, Cape Royal, Powell's Plateau, and Grandview Point, Point Sublime, Bissell, and Moran Points, the Temple of Set, Vishnu's Temple, Shiva's Temple, Twin Temples, Tower of Babel, Hans's Column. These fairly good names given by Dutton, Holmes, Moran, and others are scattered over a large stretch of the canyon wilderness. All the canyon rock beds are lavishly painted, except a few neutral bars in the granite notch at the bottom occupied by the river, which makes but little sign. It is a vast wilderness of rocks in a sea of light, colored and glowing like oak and maple woods in autumn, when the sun gold is richest. I have just said that it is impossible to learn what the canyon is like from descriptions and pictures. Powell's and Dutton's descriptions present magnificent views, not only of the canyon but of all the grand region round about it, and Holmes's drawings accompanying Dutton's report are wonderfully good. Surely, faithful and loving skill can go no further in putting the multitudinous decorated forms on paper. But the colors, the living, rejoicing colors, chanting morning and evening in chorus to heaven, whose brush or pencil, however lovingly inspired, can give us these? And if paint is of no effect, what hope lies in pencil work? Only this: some may be incited by it to go and see for themselves. No other range of mountainous rock work of anything like the same extent have I seen that is so strangely, boldly, lavishly colored. The famous Yellowstone Canyon below the falls comes to mind, but, wonderful as it is, and well-deserved as is its fame, compared with this, it is only a bright rainbow ribbon at the roots of the pines. Each of the series of level, continuous beds of carboniferous rocks of the canyon has, as we have seen, its own characteristic color. The summit limestone beds are pale yellow. Next below these are the beautiful rose-colored cross-bedded sandstones. Next there are 1,000 feet of brilliant red sandstones, and below these the red wall limestones, over 2,000 feet thick, rich, massy red, the greatest and most influential of the series, and forming the main color fountain. Between these are many neutral tinted beds. The prevailing colors are wonderfully deep and clear, changing and blending with varying intensity from hour to hour, day to day, season to season, throbbing, wavering, glowing, responding to every passing cloud or storm. A world of color in itself, now burning in separate rainbow bars, streaked and blotched with shade, now glowing in one smooth, all-pervading ethereal radiance, like the aspen glow, uniting the rocky world with the heavens. The dawn, as in all the pure, dry desert country, is ineffably beautiful. And when the first level sunbeams sting the domes and spires, with what a burst of power the big wild days begin. The dead and the living, rocks and hearts alike, awake and sing the new old song of creation. All the massy headlands and salient angles of the walls, and the multitudinous temples and palaces seem to catch the light at once, and cast thick black shadows athwart hollow and gorge, bringing out details as well as the main massive features of the architecture, while all the rocks, as if wild with life, throb and quiver and glow in the glorious sunburst, rejoicing. Every rock temple, then, becomes a temple of music, every spire and pinnacle an angel of light and song, shouting color hallelujahs. As the day draws to a close, shadows, wondrous, black and thick, like those of the morning, fill up the wall hollows, while the glowing rocks, their rough angles burned off, seem soft and hot to the heart as they stand submerged in purple haze, which now fills the canyon like a sea. Still deeper, richer, more divine grow the great walls and temples, until in the supreme flaming glory of sunset the whole canyon is transfigured, as if all the life and light of centuries of sunshine, stored up and condensed in the rocks, was now being poured forth, as if from one glorious fountain, flooding both earth and sky. Strange to say, in the full white effulgence of the midday hours, the bright colors grow dim and terrestrial in common gray haze, and the rocks, after the manner of the mountains, seem to crouch and drowse, and shrink to less than half their real stature, and have nothing to say to one, as if not at home. But it is fine to see how quickly they come to life and grow radiant and communicative, as soon as a band of white clouds come floating by. As if shouting for joy, they seem to spring up to meet them in hearty salutation, eager to touch them and beg their blessings. It is just in the midst of these dull midday hours that the canyon clouds are born. A good storm cloud full of lightning and rain on its way to its work on a sunny desert day is a glorious object. Across the canyon opposite the hotel is a little tributary of the Colorado called Bright Angel Creek. A fountain cloud still better deserves the name Angel of the Desert Wells. Clad in bright plumage, carrying cool shade and living water to countless animals and plants ready to perish, noble in form and gesture, seeming able for anything, pouring life-giving, wonder-working floods from its alabaster fountains, as if some sky lake had broken. To every gulch and gorge on its favorite ground is given a passionate torrent, roaring, replying to the rejoicing lightning, stones tons in weight, hurrying away as if frightened, showing something of the way Grand Cañon work is done. Clouds of the canyon are of this sort, massive, swelling cumuli, growing rapidly, displaying delicious tones of purple and gray in the hollows of their sun-beaten bosses, showering favored areas of the heated landscape, and vanishing in an hour or two. Some, busy and thoughtful-looking, glide with beautiful motion along the middle of the canyon in flocks, turning aside here and there, lingering, as if studying the needs of particular spots, exploring side canyons, peering into hollows, like birds seeking nest places, or hovering aloft on outspread wings. They scan all the red wilderness, dispensing their blessings of cool shadows and rain where the need is the greatest, refreshing the rocks, their offspring as well as the vegetation, continuing their sculpture, deepening gorges and sharpening peaks. Sometimes, blending all together, they weave a ceiling from rim to rim, perhaps opening a window here and there for sunshine to stream through, suddenly lighting some palace or temple and making it flare in the rain as if on fire. Sometimes, as one sits gazing from a high jutting promontory, the sky all clear, showing not the slightest wisp or penciling, a bright band of cumuli will appear suddenly, coming up the canyon in single file as if tracing a well-known trail, passing in review, each in turn darting its lances and dropping its shower, making a row of little vertical rivers in the air above the big brown one. Others seem to grow from mere points and fly high above the canyon, yet following its course for a long time, noiseless, as if hunting, then suddenly darting lightning at unseen marks and hurrying on. Or they loiter, here and there, as if idle, like laborers out of work, waiting to be hired. Half a dozen or more showers may oftentimes be seen falling at once, while far the greater part of the sky is in sunshine, and not a raindrop comes nigh one. These thunder showers, from as many separate clouds, looking like wisps of long hair, may vary greatly in effects. The pale, faint streaks are showers that fail to reach the ground, being evaporated on the way down through the dry, thirsty air, like streams in deserts. Many, on the other hand, which in the distance seem insignificant, are really heavy rain, however local. These are the gray wisps, well zigzagged with lightning. The darker ones are torrent rain, which on broad steep slopes of favorable conformation give rise to so-called cloudbursts. And wonderful is the commotion they cause. The gorges and gulches below them, usually dry, break out in loud uproar, with a sudden downrush of muddy, boulder-laden floods. Down they all go in one simultaneous gush, roaring, like lions rudely awakened, each of the tawny brood actually kicking up a dust at the first onset. During the winter months, snow falls over all the high plateau, usually to a considerable depth, whitening the rim and the roofs of the canyon buildings. But last winter, when I arrived at Bright Angel in the middle of January, there was no snow in sight, and the ground was dry, greatly to my disappointment, for I had made the trip mainly to see the canyon in its winter garb. Soothingly, I was informed that this was an exceptional season, and that the good snow might arrive at any time. After waiting a few days, I gladly hailed a broad-browed cloud, coming grandly on from the west in big, promising blackness, very unlike the white sailors of the summer skies. Under the lee of a rim ledge, with another snow lover, I watched its movements as it took possession of the canyon and all the adjacent region in sight. Trailing its gray fringes over the spiry tops of the great temples and towers, it gradually settled lower, embracing them all with ineffable kindness and gentleness of touch, and fondled the little cedars and pines as they quivered eagerly in the wind like young birds begging their mothers to feed them. The first flakes and crystals began to fly about noon, sweeping straight up the middle of the canyon and swirling in magnificent eddies along the sides. Gradually, the hearty swarms closed their ranks, and all the canyon was lost in gray gloom, except a short section of the wall and a few trees beside us, which looked glad with snow in their needles and about their feet as they leaned out over the gulf. Suddenly the storm opened with magical effect to the north over the canyon of Bright Angel Creek, enclosing a sunlit mass of the canyon architecture, spanned by great white concentric arches of cloud like the bows of a silvery aurora. Above these, and a little back of them, was a series of upboiling purple clouds, and high above all, in the background, a range of noble cumuli towered aloft, like snow-laden mountains, their pure pearl bosses flooded with sunshine. The whole noble picture, calmly glowing, was framed in thick gray gloom, which soon closed over it, and the storm went on, opening and closing until night covered all. 2 days later, when we were on a jutting point about 18 miles east of Bright Angel and 1,000 feet higher, we enjoyed another storm of equal glory as to cloud effects, though only a few inches of snow fell. Before the storm began, we had a magnificent view of this grander upper part of the canyon, and also of the Coconini Forest and Painted Desert. The march of the clouds, with their storm banners flying over this sublime landscape, was unspeakably glorious, and so also was the breaking up of the storm the next morning, the mingling of silver-capped rock, sunshine, and cloud. Most tourists make out to be in a hurry even here. Therefore their few days or hours would be best spent on the promontories nearest the hotel. Yet a surprising number go down the Bright Angel Trail to the brink of the inner gloomy granite gorge overlooking the river. Deep canyons attract like high mountains. The deeper they are, the more surely we are drawn into them. On foot, of course, there is no danger whatever, and with ordinary precautions, but little on animals. In comfortable tourist faith, unthinking, unfearing, down go men, women, and children on whatever is offered, horse, mule, or burro, as if saying with Jean Paul, "Fear nothing but fear." Not without reason, for these canyon trails down the stairways of the gods are less dangerous than they seem, less dangerous than home stairs. The guides are cautious, and so are the experienced, much-enduring beasts. The scrawniest Rocinantes and wizened rat mules cling hard to the rocks, endwise or sidewise, like lizards or ants. From terrace to terrace, climate to climate, Down one creeps in sun and shade, through gorge and gully and grassy ravine, and, after a long scramble on foot, at last beneath the mighty cliffs, one comes to the grand roaring river. End of section 3. Section 4 of The Grand Cañon of the Colorado by John Muir. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. To the mountaineer, the depth of the canyon from 5,000 to 6,000 feet will not seem so very wonderful, for he has often explored others that are about as deep. But the most experienced will be awestruck by the vast extent of strange countersunk scenery, the multitude of huge rock monuments of painted masonry, built up in regular courses, towering above, beneath, and round about him. By the Bright Angel Trail, the last 1,500 feet of the descent to the river has to be made afoot, down the gorge of Indian Garden Creek. Most of the visitors do not like this part, and are content to stop at the end of the horse trail and look down on the dull brown flood from the edge of the Indian Garden Plateau. By the New Haunts Trail, excepting a few daringly steep spots, you can ride all the way to the river, where there is a good spacious campground in a mesquite grove. This trail, built by brave Haunts, begins on the highest part of the rim, 8,000 feet above the sea, 1,000 feet higher than the head of Bright Angel Trail, and the descent is a little over 6,000 feet, through a wonderful variety of climate and life. Often, late in the fall, when frosty winds are blowing and snow is flying at one end of the trail, tender plants are blooming in balmy summer weather at the other. The trip down and up can be made afoot easily in a day. In this way, one is free to observe the scenery and vegetation, instead of merely clinging to his animal and watching its steps. But all who have time should go prepared to camp a while on the riverbank, to rest and learn something about the plants and animals and the mighty flood roaring past. In cool, shady amphitheaters at the head of the trail, there are groves of white silver fir and Douglas spruce, with ferns and saxifrages that recall snowy mountains. Below these, yellow pine, nut pine, juniper, hop hornbeam, ash, maple, holly-leaved berberis, cowania, spirea, dwarf oak, and other small shrubs and trees. In dry gulches and on taluses and sun-beaten crags are sparsely scattered yuccas, cactuses, agave, etc. Where springs gush from the rocks, there are willow thickets, grassy flats, and bright flowery gardens. And in the hottest recesses, the delicate abronia, mesquite, woody compositae, and arborescent cactuses. The most striking and characteristic part of this widely varied vegetation are the cactaceae, strange, leafless, old-fashioned plants with beautiful flowers and fruit, in every way able and admirable. While grimly defending themselves with innumerable barbed spears, they offer both food and drink to man and beast. Their juicy globes and discs and fluted cylindrical columns are almost the only desert wells that never go dry, and they always seem to rejoice the more and grow plumper and juicier the hotter the sunshine and sand. Some are spherical, like rolled-up porcupines, crouching in rock hollows beneath a mist of gray lances, unmoved by the wildest winds. Others, standing as erect as bushes and trees or tall branchless pillars crowned with magnificent flowers, their prickly armor sparkling, look boldly abroad over the glaring desert, making the strangest forests ever seen or dreamed of. Sirius Giganteus, the grim chief of the desert tribe, is often 30 or 40 feet high in southern Arizona. Several species of tree yuccas in the same deserts, laid in an early spring with superb white lilies, form forests hardly less wonderful, though here they grow singly or in small, lonely groves. The low, almost stemless yucca baccata, with beautiful lily flowers and sweet banana-like fruit, prized by the Indians, is common along the canyon rim, growing on lean, rocky soil beneath mountain mahogany, nut pines, and junipers, beside dense flowery mats of Spirea caspitosa and the beautiful pennant-leaved Spirea millefolium. The nut pine, Pinus edulis, scattered along the upper slopes and roofs of the canyon buildings, is the principal tree of the strange dwarf coconini forest. It is a picturesque stub of a pine, about 25 feet high, usually with dead lichened limbs thrust through its rounded head, and grows on crags and fissured rock tables, braving heat and frost, snow and drought, and continues patiently, faithfully fruitful for centuries. Indians and insects and almost every desert bird and beast come to it to be fed. To civilized people from corn and cattle and wheat-field countries, the canyon at first sight seems as uninhabitable as a glacier crevasse, utterly silent and barren. Nevertheless, it is the home of a multitude of our fellow mortals, men as well as animals and plants. Centuries ago it was inhabited by tribes of Indians who, long before Columbus saw America, built thousands of stone houses in its crags, and large ones, some of them several stories high, with hundreds of rooms on the mesas of the adjacent regions. Their cliff dwellings, almost numberless, are still to be seen in the canyon, scattered along both sides, from top to bottom and throughout its entire length, built of stone and mortar in seams and fissures like swallows' nests, or on isolated ridges and peaks. The ruins of larger buildings are found on open spots by the river, but most of them aloft on the brink of the wildest, giddiest precipices, sites evidently chosen for safety from enemies, and seemingly accessible only to the birds of the air. Many caves were also used as dwelling places, as were mere seams on cliff fronts formed by unequal weathering, and with or without outer or side walls. And some of them were covered with colored pictures of animals. The most interesting of these cliff dwellings had pathetic little ribbon-like strips of garden on narrow terraces, where irrigating water could be carried to them. Most romantic of sky gardens, but eloquent of hard times. In recesses along the river and on the first plateau flats above its gorge were fields and gardens of considerable size, where irrigating ditches may still be traced. Some of these ancient gardens are still cultivated by Indians, descendants of cliff dwellers, who raise corn, squashes, melons, potatoes, etc., to reinforce the produce of the many wild food-furnishing plants, nuts, beans, berries, yucca and cactus fruits, grass and sunflower seeds, etc., and the flesh of animals, deer, rabbits, lizards, etc. The canyon Indians I have met here seem to be living much as did their ancestors, though not now driven into rock dens. They are able, erect men with commanding eyes, which nothing that they wish to see can escape. They are never in a hurry, have a strikingly measured, deliberate, bearish manner of moving the limbs and turning the head, are capable of enduring weather, thirst, hunger, and overabundance, and are blessed with stomachs which triumph over everything the wilderness may offer. Evidently, their lives are not bitter. The largest of the canyon animals one is likely to see is the wild sheep, or Rocky Mountain bighorn, a most admirable beast, with limbs that never fail, at home on the most nerve-trying precipices, acquainted with all the springs and passes and broken-down, jumpable places in the sheer ribbon cliffs, bounding from crag to crag in easy grace and confidence of strength, his great horns held high above his shoulders, wild red blood beating and hissing through every fiber of him, like the wind through a quivering mountain pine. Deer also are occasionally met in the canyon, making their way to the river when the wells of the plateau are dry. Along the short spring streams, beavers are still busy, as is shown by the cottonwood and willow timber they have cut and peeled, found in all the river drift heaps. In the most barren cliffs and gulches there dwell a multitude of lesser animals, well-dressed, clear-eyed, happy little beasts, wood rats, kangaroo rats, gophers, wood mice, skunks, rabbits, bobcats, and many others, gathering food or dozing in their sun-warmed dens. Lizards, too, of every kind and color are here enjoying life on the hot cliffs, and making the brightest of them brighter. Nor is there any lack of feathered people. The golden eagle may be seen, and the osprey, hawks, jays, hummingbirds, the mourning dove, and cheery familiar singers, the black-headed grosbeak, robin, bluebird, Townsend's thrush, and many warblers, sailing the sky and enlivening the rocks and bushes through all the canyon wilderness. Here at Hans's River Camp, or a few miles above it, brave Powell and his brave men passed their first night in the canyon on their adventurous voyage of discovery 33 years ago. They faced 1,000 dangers, open or hidden, now in their boats gladly sliding down swift, smooth reaches, now rolled over and over in back-combing surges of rough, roaring cataracts, sucked under in eddies, swimming like beavers, tossed and beaten like castaway drift, stout-hearted, undaunted, doing their work through it all. After a month of this, they floated smoothly out of the dark, gloomy, roaring abyss into light and safety 200 miles below. As the flood rushes past us, heavy laden with desert mud, we naturally think of its sources, its countless silvery branches outspread on thousands of snowy mountains along the crest of the continent, and the life of them, the beauty of them, their history and romance. Its topmost springs are far north and east in Wyoming and Colorado, on the snowy Wind River, Front, Park, and Sawatch ranges, dividing the two ocean waters, and the Elk, Wasatch, Uinta, and innumerable spurs streaked with streams made famous by early explorers and hunters. It is a river of rivers, the Duchesne, San Rafael, Yampa, Dolores, Gunnison, Cochetopa, Uncompahgre, Eagle and Roaring Rivers, the Green and the Grand, and scores of others with branches innumerable, as mad and glad a band as ever sang on mountains, descending in glory of foam and spray from snow-banks and glaciers through their rocky, moraine-dammed, beaver-dammed channels. Then all emerging from dark balsam and pine woods and coming together, they meander through wide, sunny park valleys, and at length enter the great plateau and flow in deep canyons, the beginning of the system culminating in this Grand Cañon of canyons. Our warm canyon camp is also a good place to give a thought to the glaciers which still exist at the heads of the highest tributaries. Some of them are of considerable size, especially those on the Wind River and Sawatch ranges in Wyoming and Colorado. They are remnants of a vast system of glaciers which recently covered the upper part of the Colorado Basin, sculptured its peaks, ridges, and valleys to their present forms, and extended far out over the plateau region. How far, I cannot now say. It appears, therefore, that, however old the main trunk of the Colorado may be, all its widespread upper branches and the landscapes they flow through are new-born, scarce at all changed as yet in any important feature since they first came to light at the close of the glacial period. The so-called Grand Colorado Plateau, of which the Grand Cañon is only one of its well-proportioned features, extends with a breadth of hundreds of miles from the flanks of the Wasatch and Park Mountains to the south of the San Francisco Peaks. Immediately to the north of the deepest part of the canyon, it rises in a series of subordinate plateaus, diversified with green meadows, marshes, bogs, ponds, forest, and grovey park valleys, a favorite Indian hunting ground inhabited by elk, deer, beaver, etc. But far the greater part of the plateau is good, sound desert, rocky, sandy, or fluffy with loose ashes and dust, dissected in some places into a labyrinth of stream-channeled chasms, like cracks in a dry clay bed, or the narrow-slit crevasses of glaciers, blackened with lava flows, dotted with volcanoes and beautiful buttes, and lined with long continuous escarpments, a vast bed of sediments of an ancient sea bottom, still nearly as level as when first laid down after being heaved into the sky a mile or two high. Walking quietly about in the alleys and byways of the Grand Cañon city, we learn something of the way it was made, and all must admire effects so great from means apparently so simple. Rain striking light hammer blows, or heavier in streams, with many rest Sundays. Soft air and light, gentle sappers and miners toiling forever. The big river sawing the plateau asunder, carrying away the eroded and ground waste, and exposing the edges of the strata to the weather. Rain torrents sawing cross streets and alleys, exposing the strata in the same way in hundreds of sections, the softer, less resisting beds weathering and receding faster, thus undermining the harder beds, which fall not only in small weathered particles, but in heavy, sheer cleaving masses, assisted down from time to time by kindly earthquakes, rain torrents rushing the fallen material to the river, keeping the wall rocks constantly exposed. Thus the canyon grows wider and deeper. So also do the side canyons and amphitheaters, while secondary gorges and cirques gradually isolate masses of the promontories, forming new buildings, all of which are being weathered and pulled and shaken down while being built, showing destruction and creation as one. We see the proudest temples and palaces in stateliest attitudes, wearing their sheets of detritus as royal robes, shedding off showers of red and yellow stones, like trees in autumn shedding their leaves, going to dust like beautiful days to night, proclaiming as with the tongues of angels the natural beauty of death. Every building is seen to be a remnant of once continuous beds of sediments, sand and slime on the floor of an ancient sea, and filled with the remains of animals, and that every particle of the sandstones and limestones of these wonderful structures was derived from other landscapes, weathered and rolled and ground in the storms and streams of other ages. And when we examine the escarpments, hills, buttes, and other monumental masses of the plateau on either side of the canyon, we discover that an amount of material has been carried off in the general denudation of the region, compared with which even that carried away in the making of the Grand Cañon is as nothing. Thus each wonder in sight becomes a window through which other wonders come to view. In no other part of the continent are the wonders of geology, the record of the world's odd lang syne, more widely open or displayed in higher piles. The whole canyon is a mine of fossils in which 5,000 feet of horizontal strata are exposed in regular succession over more than 1,000 square miles of wall space. And on the adjacent plateau region, there is another series of beds twice as thick, forming a grand geological library, a collection of stone books covering thousands of miles of shelving, tier on tier, conveniently arranged for the student. And with what wonderful scriptures are their pages filled! Myriad forms of successive floras and faunas, lavishly illustrated with colored drawings, carrying us back into the midst of the life of a past infinitely remote. And as we go on and on, studying this old life in the light of the life beating warmly about us, we enrich and lengthen our own. End of The Grand Cañon of the Colorado by John Muir. Read by Rebecca Eden Walker.
The human history at the Grand Canyon is as varied and unique as the canyon itself. From ancient First Peoples to Spanish conquistadors to a modern assortment of oddballs, dreamers, and entrepreneurs. These are their stories. This is Echoes from the Canyon.
Inspired by exciting tales of recent river trips, newlyweds Glenn and Bessie Hyde fantasized about the rapids of the Colorado River during the summer of tending family fields in Idaho. Soon after harvest was stored for the year, they made their way to Green River, Utah, to gather supplies and build their vessel, a flat-bottomed sweep scow. On October 20th, 1928, they began their journey. Launching on the river, they would never leave.
I was planning to join my son and Bessie. I should have been with them. They say I should stop searching, but I can't. I know the possibility of finding them alive is not good, but there might be a chance. I know my boy, even though he and Bessie only know the canyon through books and maps. I know Glenn can survive in any environment. I taught him how. He didn't grow up with a silver spoon in his mouth. We are survivors. We do what we need to do. It has been 702 days since they were last seen, 690 days since Bessie's last journal entry. But I cannot stop searching for the only answer as to what happened, what accident could have occurred. It had to be an accident. Some say they might have purposefully hiked out and started new lives. Glenn wouldn't do that, though. He would not just walk away from me, from his farm, his family, and he would not leave Bessie if she could not make it. He loves her so. You can tell she loves him just as much. You can see it in her eyes. No, it was an accident. It had to be an accident. All their supplies were still in the boat. Bessie's journal, Glenn's rifle, their money, their hiking and camping supplies, their food, all left in the scow. There was no sign of trouble, just the two of them missing. They had all they needed to survive and planned to stay near the water if anything went awry. When his letter arrived about his accident in Marble Canyon, I wondered how Bessie was doing on this trip. It would have shook me up to see Glenn being thrown from the scow while going through a rapid after getting knocked on the chin with the sweep. Then to see him struggle to get back in the boat after being underwater, tossed around through the rushing water. Not the type of honeymoon most girls would agree to. Bessie's different, though. She is tough and eager for adventure. I didn't wait. They wrote me over and over that the worst water was behind them, but I never believed it. I never stopped fearing for them. I should have been there. I wished with all that I am that I would hear from my boy by December 11th. But when I didn't, I realized I wasn't surprised. I didn't wait. I was on my way to Las Vegas the next day. I feel like I've searched everywhere and nowhere. I'm thankful for so many folks who have helped me. I wish I could be on every search, on every ground search, every plane, every river trip. I have nothing left. I want to search every side canyon and ravine, but the money is gone. This depression is hitting the country so hard. Glenn's insurance money is gone. I've already mortgaged my farm. I've drained accounts. I have done things I am not proud of. I have nothing left except my will. I know that my boy and sweet Bessie have passed. I just cannot stop trying to find them. I need to know what happened. I believe I know where it happened now. I thought for so long the water was calm in that part of the river, no matter what anyone said. That rapid is worse than I ever knew. Ellsworth has helped me understand this. I am a man who accepts what comes my way, but in this case, I wish so many things had gone differently. I wish they had accepted the life preservers Emery had offered them when they stopped at the village on the south rim. I wish there had been more water when they ran the river. I wish we had checked what was on the other end of that scow line before Emery cut it. That line was stuck tight on something below the waves. Despite it all, I have been planning a fourth search, this time by water. I want to give those side canyons to the north, too rugged to reach by foot, a closer look. When I sleep, I search for them, every night. Until I have the means again, dreams will have to do. As I sit in this cabin on Glenn's property, I'm comforted by sweet Bessie's final words and poems. And I still have what Nelson brought me from their last camp. A few dried lima beans, a can just like any I have in the larder here on the farm. The only difference is, I know my son and his sweet wife touched them. It is the closest I may ever get to my boy.
Roland Hyde never made it back to Grand Canyon to search for his son. He finished out his days on his and Glenn's farm in Idaho. In 1945, Roland passed away at the age of 86, 15 years after his last search. He never found out what happened to his son and Bessie. The Honeymooner's disappearance on the Colorado River is still one of the greatest mysteries of Grand Canyon history.
"Oh, Mama dear, please come. My dolly must be drowned. When I put her on the creek, she sunk without a sound." Wee Betty's eyes filled with tears. Where could poor Dolly be? Perhaps she turned to a mermaid and drifted out to sea.
Grand Canyon National Park, like most places in the Southwest, have many far-fetched stories and exaggerations. Many of these tales are as tall as the canyon walls, Between the miners, rangers, and mule wranglers, it can be difficult to tell when truth gets in the way of a good story. However, out of all the locations within the canyon, Phantom Ranch seems to be the setting of many plots. Found at the bottom of Grand Canyon by the Colorado River, Phantom Ranch is considered an oasis by backpackers and mule riders, with an abundance of shade, creeks, lodging, and lemonade for sale. Despite its long history, there remains many unanswered questions about the ranch. During my time at Phantom, I heard accounts by others that I found hard to believe. Ranchers and mule wranglers told me the old bunkhouse at Phantom Ranch is known to be haunted. It is said a female mule wrangler was surprised when she saw a ghost of a mule packer standing inside the bunkhouse of where he died of natural causes. She said it was more concerning to know she would sleep in the same bed he died in. Many hikers and campers in the campground say they've seen shadows walking past them, sometimes wearing clothes from a different time, like suits and ankle-length skirts from the 1950s, while others dressed as hikers only ask for water. Others have heard the crunch of heavy boots on gravel without seeing the source of the noise. I do not know if I believe these stories, but there are parts of Phantom that remain unexplained. One that remains is how Phantom acquired its name. The ranch itself was named by its architect and designer, Mary Jane Elizabeth Coulter. The story goes that the ranch owners, as well as Coulter's employers, the Fred Harvey Company, wanted to name the lodge Roosevelt Chalet, named after President Theodore Roosevelt, who visited the area 8 years before. Apparently, Coulter said that Roosevelt had too many places already named after him and demanded the name be Phantom Ranch, after nearby Phantom Canyon. The origin of Phantom Canyon is harder to place. It is not known who or when Phantom was given its name, or what name it had before. There are several explanations, but nothing beyond theories and guesswork. Deb Branning wrote this about Phantom Canyon and Grand Canyon ghost stories. There is much speculation to why the word phantom became associated with the area. Phantom Ranch was said to be named after Phantom Creek, which appears to be hidden from view like a phantom. Legends tell us that prospectors called it Phantom because of the eerie, mist-filled air on cold mornings deep in the canyon. Perhaps it seemed like a ghost because of the elusive oasis tucked away in the folds of Phantom Fault, and it cannot be seen from the rim. Others proclaimed it's named after the ominous Phantom Rock. This formation stands about 2 miles north of the ranch along North Kaibab Trail, a rocky projection along the trail that resembles a dark, cloaked phantom. It may be hard to know for sure how Phantom Canyon received its name, but hike through its narrows during the right or wrong time, it's easy to see that Phantom is a fitting one. On cold mornings, there can be a fog or smoke drifting through the quiet canyon. During the summer monsoon season, hiking up the creek can turn from a relaxing swimming hole to a tragic misstep. A few minutes after stepping off the trail into the water, the canyon quickly turns into a narrow channel and the sky into a thin blue line. It would be nearly impossible to see any signs of a storm approaching. The only warning of a flash flood in the canyon would be a slow rumble like thunder that doesn't stop but only grows louder. Visitors caught in a flash flood within Phantom Canyon are often swept away. In July 1997, one visitor was caught in the flood and was tossed a half-mile downstream before he was able to self-rescue. He escaped, but others are often not as fortunate. The person who named Phantom Canyon will probably never be known. We will never know why or for what reason Phantom was the word that came into their mind, and why that name has stuck for over 100 years. It is one side canyon amongst hundreds of others within the national park. If one canyon can hold this many stories and unanswered questions, one can only imagine what other canyons can tell.
Howdy, William Bass here. I started the Bass Camp in 1884, and it has become home to quite the community of visitors. Often they come for a week and stay for a month. I've shared my home with the likes of Zane Grey, John Muir, Thomas Moran, and even Henry Ford. I'm a member of a large community of prospectors along the rim, but also have grown close to my neighbors that have a supai, who helped me locate local springs, and in turn I've given them seeds and championed efforts to build a school, and post office in Havasu Canyon. There are a lot of great people in this great place, so come on out and let me introduce you to all of them. I'm William Bass, and we'll leave the lantern lit for you.
On May 24, 1869, John Wesley Powell left Green River Station, Wyoming Territory, with 9 men in 4 wooden boats with the intention of running the Colorado River through the Grand Canyon, the last unexplored area in the West. On August 30, 1869, Powell floated out of Grand Canyon with 5 men and 2 boats, having achieved his goal. What happened to the 4 men who started the trip but did not finish it? Frank Goodman, an Englishman who was roaming the American West in search of experience, found it when he signed on to Powell's expedition. But he nearly drowned in early June at Disaster Falls when his boat sank, taking all his gear and clothing with it, along with 1/3 of the supplies of the expedition. By early July, Goodman had had enough. His nerves were shot. On July 5th, he walked away from the expedition and back to civilization. Powell and 8 men continued on. The men endured hardship after hardship. They ran dangerous rapids. They lined, that is, they walked along the shore holding onto lines attached to the boat as it floated through the rapid, or portaged, meaning carried the boats along the shore to be relaunched below the rapid. They were thrown overboard and had to swim for their lives. What food they had left spoiled. They suffered through 100-degree heat and flash floods. By mid-August, they were fighting with one another at every turn. On August 27th, they arrived at what was to be named Separation Rapid, one of the worst yet. After scouting from shore, the men determined that they could neither line nor portage around it and had no choice but to run it. 3 men, however, had reached their limit: Ormel Holland, his brother Seneca, and William Dunn. They decided to hike out of the canyon and walk overland to one of the Mormon settlements they knew to be in the area, rather than to commit certain suicide by running the rapid. On the morning of August 28th, Powell and the remaining 5 men boarded 2 of the boats, leaving one behind, and successfully ran the rapid. Dunn and the Howlands, having watched the boats make it to safety below, turned away and climbed out of the canyon. 1 week later, as Powell and his brother Walter were traveling through St. George, Utah on their way back to Salt Lake City, he asked for news about the 3 men who had left the river on August 28th and traveled overland. The first news of their fate arrived in St. George by telegram on September 7th, a few days after Powell's inquiry. It stated that 3 white men were killed by Shivwits Paiutes in retaliation for killing a young woman. The telegram had no indication who sent it or where it was from. When Powell heard this news, he strongly disagreed with the notion that his men would kill an innocent young woman. Several days later, a dispatch was received by Powell in Salt Lake City stating that a Southern Mormon elder had discovered the bodies, but there is no mention of what he did with the bodies. By the end of the month, the story had changed. The 3 men did not molest the young woman. Rather, they were killed by an enraged Shivwits, whose friends had been killed by miners on the other side of the Colorado River. The story continues with the claim that the Shivwits burned all the papers possessed by the 3 men. The papers were presumably the duplicate records of the expedition that the men were carrying. The story changes once again in a November letter written by one Joseph Johnson, a resident of St. George, when it is reported that the men raped the young woman before killing her, and that once they had been murdered, their bodies were left to the wolves. This story is immediately discounted by Johnson, and he states that the Paiutes killed the white men for what they had. Now the motive is robbery. Johnson changes his story in December when he again writes that the men were killed by a band of Shivwits who were seeking revenge for one Shivwit Paiute who was killed by miners across the Colorado River. The final known account, penned by the aforementioned Southern Mormon elder Erastus Snow on December 9th, states that he sent out a search party in response to Powell's inquiry in early September, although he failed to mention this in his September dispatch to Salt Lake City. The search party returned with the news that some Paiutes had killed 3 white men about 100 miles southeast of St. George, not because they had provoked the Paiutes, but in retaliation for some miners who had killed some Paiutes and ravished their young women on the other side of the Colorado River. The following summer, Powell returned to the area to plan another river trip and met with the Shivwits to try to get some answers. A Mormon guide named Jacob Hamblin translated the exchange. The Shivwits admitted to the killing, but now it was one young woman who was killed by miners in a drunken brawl, and Powell's men happened along at the wrong time and were killed in revenge. So, what really happened? No bodies have ever been found, although one of the original expedition members, William Hawkins, stated a few months before he died in 1919 that he had found and buried the bodies in the Shivwits Mountains below Kanab Wash, a statement that has never been verified. None of the men's possessions have ever been found, although Jack Sumner claimed to have seen the silver watch he gave to Ora Mulholland to give to his sister in the possession of a drunken carouser. Their papers, possessions, and bodies disappeared, seemingly into thin air. All we have are changing stories and unconfirmed theories. Were they killed by Paiutes or by Mormons, who thought the men were federal agents sent to harass them, and who then blamed the Paiutes when they realized their mistake? Why did the story keep changing? Did Jacob Hamblin give a faithful translation of the Shivwits' confession to the murders? If the Paiutes did admit to killing the white men, why were they not charged and punished? For now, we have a lot of unanswered questions. If somebody finds a pile of bones one day on the Shivwits Plateau, and DNA analysis proves they belong to Ora Mulholland, Seneca Howland, and William Dunn, maybe then we will know what happened to the 3 men who hiked out of Separation Canyon on August 28, 1869, and were never seen again.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Ladies and gentlemen, now you can travel all the way to the Grand Canyon in comfort and style. Ride the Santa Fe Railroad to the very edge of the grandest canyon of them all. Instead of a dusty, long trip on a bumpy stagecoach, you now can enjoy the comfort of a deluxe passenger car with the most modern of features, and at the low cost of only $3.95. You arrive from Williams, Arizona, relaxed and ready to enjoy the views of one of the 7 wonders of the natural world. And if you wish to stay overnight, the El Tovar Hotel has accommodations that will not disappoint you. Many say it is the finest hotel west of the Mississippi River, and only a few steps from the rim, with glorious views of the canyon. Run by the celebrated Fred Harvey Company, you will enjoy great accommodations and the finest of meals served in the beautifully decorated dining room.
Call Klondike 5 to make your reservation today.
Now, if you read the history books, or talk to anyone who knows anything about the history of the Grand Canyon, they'll probably all tell you that Major John Wesley Powell was the first man to run the Colorado River through Grand Canyon on his expedition in 1869. But if you really start digging, and you talk to real down-to-earth western frontier folk, miners, and prospectors like myself, or folks who live at the Grand Canyon or who run the Colorado River, you might hear the name of another fella. James White. Now, James White was pulled out of the Colorado River in Colville, Arizona Territory, which is about 60 miles down the river from the Grand Wash Cliffs at the western end of the Grand Canyon in early September 1867. He was floating on a raft made of logs tied together, if you can believe it. Half naked and on death's very doorstep he was, starving and covered with sores and cuts and bruises, his hair and skin bleached from the sun, barely showing any sign of life. A bunch of folks pulled him out of the river, wondering where on God's green earth he could have come from. Ain't nobody usually come down the river to Colville, except a group of Mormons earlier that year in the spring, led by a fella named Jacob Hamblin, and they sure didn't look like this fella after that trip. Now, the whole region upriver of the Grand Wash Cliffs for 1,000 miles was still marked unexplored on maps in those days. No one really knew what was there, except tales of a gigantic canyon the likes of which no one ever saw, with walls soaring thousands of feet high on either side of the river. But by the looks of him, this fellow White may well have gone through there. So naturally, the folks in Colville were pretty keen on hearing his tale. Now, it turns out he'd been prospecting for gold with two other fellas over in Colorado Territory in the San Juan Mountains about a month before, working their way from the San Juan River up north towards the Grand, when a bunch of Indians jumped him. Now, leader of the group, a fella by the name of Captain Baker, he was shot and killed right off the bat, but White and the other fella, George Stroll was his name, they managed to escape with their horses down a side canyon and reach the river. Under cover of dark, they took some supplies from their horses and some ropes and tied together a bunch of driftwood into a raft, shoved off on the river to get away from the Indians what killed Captain Baker. After about 4 days on the river, Stroll was washed off the raft in a rapid and drowned. After that, White tied himself to the raft with a length of rope so he could pull himself back to it anytime he was washed off. And no food neither, seeing as how the provisions they'd grabbed from the horses were washed away when George Stroll drowned. So he had to scrounge for whatever he could find along the way, which weren't much. After 7 straight days with no food, White ran into some Indians who traded him part of a dog for one of his pistols, and I suppose that after that long on the river with nothing to eat, even the hindquarters of a dog would seem like a feast. After White was hauled out of the river in Colville and he crawled back from the brink of death enough to tell his story best he could remember it, the news traveled pretty fast. Now, Mr. White wasn't much for writing neither, and he rather wanted to put the whole affair behind him, so it mostly fell to others to write down and tell his story, and his tale ended up being written down about half a dozen different ways by different people, and so what really happened ended up a bit jumbled in the end. Now, Mr. White did write a letter to his brother back in Wisconsin, though, about 3 weeks after being fished out of the river, recounting his adventures as best he could, and putting aside the official report by Dr. Perry for the railroad survey and the newspaper articles which started popping up all over the country, I'd say Mr. White's own words probably tell the story best, and I just happen to have a copy of that letter with me here today. Dear brother, he started out, it has been some time since I've heard from you. I got no answer from the last letter that I wrote, for I left soon after I wrote. I went prospecting with Captain Baker and George Stroll in the San Juan Mountains. We found very good prospects, but nothing that would pay. And we started down to the San Juan River. We traveled down about 200 miles, and then we crossed over on the Colorado and camped. And we laid over one day. We found out we could not travel down the river, and our horses had sore feet, and we'd made up our minds to turn back when we were attacked by 15 or 20 Ute Indians. They killed Baker, and George Stoll and myself, we took 4 ropes from our horses and knacks, 10 pounds of flour, and our guns. Now, we had good sailing for 3 days, and the 4th day, George Stroll was washed off the raft and drowned. And that left me alone. My raft would tip over 3 or 4 times a day. The 3rd day, we lost our flour, and 7 days I had nothing to eat but my rawhide knife cover. Now, the 8th or 9th day, I got some mesquite beans. And on the 14th day, I arrived at Colville, where I was taken care of by James Ferry. And I was 10 days without pants or boots or hat, and I was sunburnt so I could hardly walk. And I saw the hardest time that any man ever did in the world, but thank God I got through safely. Now, to a simple prospector and man of the West such as myself, Mr. White's words ring pretty true and honest, but it didn't take long for folks to start trying to tear him down. just 2 years later, in 1869, Major Powell finished his famous expedition down through the Big Canyon of the Colorado, Grand Canyon as he started calling it. And right away, he and his men started trying to say there ain't no way that one man on a raft could have made that trip. But after Powell turned into a big shot back east in Washington, most folks forgot about poor old James White. Now, the thing is, that was just fine with him. You see, Mr. White just wanted to forget about the whole thing and move on with his life. Like most of us prospectors and frontiersmen out west, Mr. White was a simple man, not much book learning, trying to make his way in the world. Now, he certainly never wanted to end up floating down a river on a raft for weeks and nearly dying in the process. Not that he even really knew that the Grand Canyon of the Colorado even existed at the time, much less that he could get famous by passing through it. Lots of folks over the years have tried to say there's no way James White could have done what he did. Though really, it wasn't really ever him that said what he did at all. He didn't even know what he'd done. And he certainly never tried to make no money off it, nor claim any fame or glory neither. Some folks even went so far as to call him a liar, said he made the whole thing up. Now, why White'd make up such a story about a canyon he didn't even really know existed, and how he ended up almost dead on a raft in Colville if he made the whole thing up, well, none of that makes sense to me at all. Well, it seems to me that things probably went down about how he said they did. In running for his life and almost dying of starvation or drowning in the rapids, he just jumbled up some details along the way, and even so, he still managed to get lots of things right about the canyon. Things no one should have known at the time. Now, point being, lots of folks have had lots to say about White's story over the years. A lot more than White himself ever really had to say about it. And we may never know for sure what really happened or whether White was really the first person through the Grand Canyon on the Colorado River. Not that it ever really seemed to matter all that much to White himself, mind you. But to those folks who say that White's trip as he told it is impossible, I'd say that, well, Senator Barry Goldwater of Arizona, a Colorado River runner himself, he said it best. To those who say that such a voyage cannot be made on a raft, I answer that men in desperate circumstances have accomplished more dangerous feats than running Colorado River rapids on a raft. To those who say that White is wrong on certain points, I say to imagine yourself starved, cold, and scared as hell in the middle of the Colorado River on a raft, and then ask yourself whether you would give a tinker's damn about the scenery or details of it. I repeat that nothing yet has been brought forward to make me accept anyone other than White as the first through here.
Echoes from the Canyon is produced by park rangers at Grand Canyon National Park, including Taryn Bartkus, Luke Bowman, Christina Caparelli, Jeremy Childs, Joe Dawson, Joel Kane, Ty Karlovitz, Nettie Klingler, Raider Lane, Brian Mall, Brendan Oates, Greg Rasnin, Ann Scott, Tish Tackett, David Whitebread, and John Wishart. We hope you can join us for the next episode. Until then, happy trails and stay safe.
Out in the moonlight, sitting on the old finding country, and don't be afraid, dear, you won't fall in. You're safe with me, dear, out on the old Grand Rim, Grand Rim.
Love and acceptance for all beings, regardless of politics, gender, size, age, beliefs. Each of us is welcome. Unity without uniformity, love and hugs.
Grand Canyon, where hidden forces shape our
ideas, beliefs, and experiences.
Join us as we uncover the stories between the canyon's colorful walls.
Probe the depths and add your voice.
For what happens
next at Grand Canyon.
At Grand Canyon.
Hello and welcome.
Okay.
This is Jesse.
This is Emily.
And this is...
This is Behind the Scenery.
Thanks for joining us today to listen to Looking for Love and Commitment at the North Rim. My name is Cameron.
My name's Ranger Doug, and we are rangers at
Grand Canyon's North Rim. And today we'll be sharing stories of weddings, different dedications, commitments people have made in their lives, all in response to the prompt. Every year people share wedding vows at this very spot. What is something you've dedicated your life to or hope to one day?
But first of all, I wanted to share a little side trip we have in mind for you. The main developed area here at the North Rim of Grand Canyon National Park is the primary destination. Lodge, campground, awesome views, Bright Angel Point Trail. All of our visitors drive 45 miles on a dead-end road, and they end up at the lodge and or the campground to enjoy those views. But if you're here for more than a day and you have a vehicle that is 22-foot length or less, then we have an awesome paved side trip, 23 miles, all the way out to a very special view. I consider the best views in all of the North Rim for their developed area. It's called Cape Royal Point Imperial Road. So I thought we could go explore that and check it out. We'll describe what's at the very end, which was the source of this podcast. Okay, let's go. It takes about 45 minutes nonstop to drive all the way to the end of the road, which is what we recommend. We recommend folks drive there, do the walk out to Cape Royal, enjoy the views, and then on their return trip, stop at all the overlooks and viewpoints. So here's what you have to see along the road. I really liked the first 5 miles or so of the road. We're going through an earlier burn area, and the whole hillsides are just loaded with small aspen trees. And they're beautiful, brilliant green in early June when we're recording this podcast now. But later on, the third, fourth week in September, whole hillsides, they turn golden color, yellow, reds, all different beautiful hues, as we have some of the best fall colors anywhere in the American West. After about 5 minutes, a gradual climb, we'll cross a divide, we'll drop down into this beautiful canyon, and it's actually Bright Angel Canyon. And for folks that have ridden the mules, stopped on a river trip, or hiked down to Phantom Ranch, there's no way in the world you would expect that the very upper end of this canyon looks as beautiful and as lush as you're driving through now. This was the site of a civilian Conservation Corps work camp in the 1930s. It was so cold at night they even called it Icebox Canyon. There's a good book called Ace in the Hole. It profiles Company 818 of the Civilian Conservation Corps if you want to learn more about the North Rim Conservation Corps camps. Then we come to a Y, a fork in the road. If we turn left on that Y, it's about a 3-mile side trip to Point Imperial, which is the highest point on the rim anywhere in Grand Canyon National Park, a little over 8,800 feet. So let's not do that side trip today. Let's continue south, and what do we see?
Yeah, so if we take that right in the Y, we'll first pass by Greenland Lake. That will be on our right, and that's a really cool sinkhole. Right now there's a good amount of water in there, and it will start drying up towards the end of the summer, but that's a short hike and you'll pass by the lake and then go towards this old little cabin. And then if we keep going along the road, to our left will be Vista Encantada, and that is one of the picnic areas with an overlook, so nice views again of the canyon and the valley there with a picnic area as well. Along the road, as we keep going, we'll pass Roosevelt Point on the left, and that will be after a little bit more of a drive. Some good overlook as well, a small trail, and then there's this rock with the quote right at the front of the overlook that kind of is Teddy Roosevelt saying to leave Grand Canyon as it is. We'll continue through the beautiful Ponderosa Pine Forest. It's super open here, very scenic, a lot of burns in this area to maintain that Ponderosa Pine Forest and keep it healthy. Once we go down this little hill, we'll pass the Cape Final trailhead. So off to our left, there's this dirt parking lot. There's a couple of trash cans there. And that's a nice 4-mile round trip hike out to Cape Final, where you have beautiful views of the river and the canyon, and you'll wind through the forest on the way there. Next, we have the Walhalla Overlook in Pueblo. So we'll pull off to the left here, and this is the Walhalla Overlook. We've got awesome views of the Colorado River here. And then if we cross the road and go to the right, we'll be at the Walhalla Pueblo, and this is the largest village site that has been found on the North Rim from ancestral people whose descendants are still here today. We'll keep going, and just at the bottom of this hill here, there's a pull-off on the left, and this is for the Cliff Springs Trail. So if we go down across the road to the right, we'll get on this short trail about half a mile, and you'll pass a granary and then get to Cliff Spring, where water's dripping out of the rocks there. And this is a little bit in the canyon itself, so it's a nice short trail to get a taste of what canyon hiking is like. And then if we continue on the road, the last little bit, this tight turn, this tight curve, we'll get to the big gravel parking lot at Cape Royal.
Well, we just arrived at the awesome view, Cape Royal view. Ranger Cameron, tell us about the trail, how we got here.
Yeah, so it's a short trail, about 0.4 miles to the end of the trail here. It's paved. It's a pretty gradual slope with a little bit of a steeper slope right at the end, but it's an awesome little trail. The first 100 yards you'll get to this nice bench that's in the shade most of the time. That's another great river view, and you'll see right through Angel's Window, so this big hole in the rock, and right through there you can see Unkar Rapids. That's mile 72 from Lee's Ferry, where Grand Canyon itself starts. But that's a great viewpoint, great place to stop and rest in the shade. As you keep going on the trail, we passed by the side trail to Angel's Window. So that hole in the rock, you can actually go on top of that there. It's not for those with a fear of heights, but it's got some really cool views, very steep drop-offs if that is your cup of tea. And then we continued down all the way here to the end of the trailhead. And Doug, what are we seeing?
Oh my gosh, this has got to be the finest view on all of the North Rim area. I can look straight across from this overlook and see the Grand View Point area along the South Rim. We can see much of the South Rim Road. It's about 25 miles or so from the South Rim Village in the southwest to the Desert View Watchtower. And if you look over there in the southeast, you can actually see a small bump on the canyon rim. That is the famous Desert View Watchtower. It's probably about 9 air miles from where we are here. Grand View Point looking straight south is about 8. And if we swing our view over to the southwest, it's about 10.5 air miles to the South Rim Village. And we really can't see the village during daylight hours. Occasionally you catch a reflection off a windshield, but at night you can see the diminished lights and pick out where the main South Rim Grand Canyon National Park Village is. Also, in the southwest corner below the rim, we can see a small section of the South Kaibab Trail. That's the route, one of two trails that take you all the way down to the Colorado River and the famous Phantom Ranch down at the bottom. We have a couple of cool geologic features right in front of us. We have Vishnu Temple. Wotan's throne is a chunk of the north rim, a flat chunk that is broken off and tilting off into the Grand Canyon away from the rim. It's not uncommon to hear or maybe even see peregrine falcons flying by, and I've been out on Cape Royal here once or twice and have caught a very rare glimpse of a California condor flying overhead. So let's go back to the parking lot and see if we can find this wedding site that was the source of your notebook.
So we're back at the trailhead in the big gravel parking lot, and at the north end, where kind of the closest part to where you drive in from, there's some vault toilets there. And then if you go to the all the way opposite end of the parking lot, the farthest south end, you'll see two metal trash cans right there. There's no signs or anything else, so just look for those trash cans at the far end of the parking lot, and that is the way to the wedding site. So there's a picnic area. It's only about 25 yards to the rim, but you'll see some picnic tables there on your left, and then on your right there's a small wooden sign that says wedding site with an arrow to the right with a little heart in it. It's very cute.
Very classy, I think.
And you'll follow that sign to the right there, another short walk, and you'll come to the wedding site itself. So there's 5 or 6 wooden benches there, and then this small rock right in the middle that serves as an altar.
So Ranger Cameron, you came up with this idea to put a blank notebook at the wedding site. Tell me how you came up with this idea and exactly how you presented this empty notebook, what the prompt was and whatnot.
Yeah, I've heard of other rangers in the past putting out notebooks with prompts in other places, since parks are such a great place for reflection, and sometimes, especially at the North Rim, you might not see a ranger in your travels, so it's a nice way to kind of engage with the place. I was thinking about the wedding site since we were out at Cape Royal doing programs every single day, and the picnic area is a good place to have a snack or to have lunch, and the wedding site is not very often visited. People have their weddings there, but other than that, not too many visitors are able to find the spot or know that it exists. So I was thinking about weddings as these dedications for people to each other, to their future together, that shared life together. And I was interested in hearing what else people have dedicated their lives to. It's been really interesting working with so many different people with all kinds of different experiences and life paths, to kind of hear what drives them, what that through line is through different seasonal experiences, through different jobs and different places. What are those things that people dedicate their lives to? What's that commitment over time?
So you came up with this idea. So how did you make that happen?
Yeah, so I got a blank notebook out, typed up a prompt, and taped that onto the notebook, wrote it inside, and then put that in a plastic bin, since we do get a lot of rain here. Put some colored pencils and pens in there so that people could kind of express how they wanted to, but took all of those things out to the wedding site right by that big stone altar at the front, and just put the notebook, or put the bin down, put a heavy rock in it so it wouldn't go anywhere, hopefully.
And how long did you have it out there?
I think it was a few weeks, maybe just under a month it was out there.
And how often would you check on it?
I tried to check at least every week.
And what kind of responses did you get?
The responses were really meaningful. They were very thoughtful. All kinds of things about people's own weddings and marriages and lives, to other things about just their personal journeys and things that they've learned over time and where they want to be spending their time and energy, and then lots of just fun, silly things as well, and the big aspirational hopes for the future that we have together.
So you had that out there and you collected it towards the end of the season last year. And then coming back for the summer of 2025, you had a chance to process some of these quotes, lump them, group them, and pick out the best of the best, and you turn this into a podcast. Now, we do have an employee here in the North Rim of Grand Canyon National Park who has experience being married at a national park. Let's invite in guest volunteer ranger Lori. How you doing?
Great, thanks. Yep, my name is Lori, and I'm a retired occupational therapist that was married at Grand Teton National Park 35 years ago this year.
What can you tell me about it? First of all, why did you pick Grand Teton?
We picked Grand Teton for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons was that we were living in Alaska and we wanted our families to be together for our wedding, and our families lived on different coasts, and Grand Teton was a great location for us to join there as a family, and it was also the place where I met my husband.
Hopefully that was good.
That was a good experience.
Okay.
Yes, he was a ski bum, and then when we met, when he was in college in Idaho, we went to Grand Teton often for skiing and hiking. So it's a very special place to us.
So once you had the idea to get married at Grand Teton, what were the steps to make that happen?
We did all of the planning from Alaska, so that was a little bit interesting. But you need to contact the national park. You need to apply for a permit to become married in a national park, and there's different rules that you need to follow to do that, which weren't too difficult. Our wedding was very small. I think there were 35 people, and it was really a time for our families to join together. And so we rented cabins for our families so that we could do a bunch of different activities together to get to know each other. So that took a little bit of planning. We planned the venue, which was Jenny Lake Lodge, and finding somebody to marry us was really interesting. We found the Teton County judge who agreed, and we needed a piano player, and we found a gift shop volunteer who played the piano for us.
Wow. And who put together the actual ceremony?
We wrote it.
Okay. And it was legal? So you had a judge?
Yeah, we had the judge. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The county judge.
And what were some of the restrictions? Do you remember any of those?
I remember something about flowers and wildflowers, and I do think that we couldn't have rice. And I think those were the two main ones, the size of the group. It wasn't too restrictive, but it was something that you needed to be mindful of.
Okay, and indoors or outdoors?
Outdoors.
Describe the actual venue and the view.
Okay, so we got married on the back patio of Jenny Lake Lodge.
Jenny Lake or Jackson Lake?
Oh, Jackson Lake Lodge.
Okay.
Yep, I'm sorry, Jackson Lake Lodge, which is beautiful, with a great view of the Tetons. It was a glorious day, and it was just a gift that both of our families could be together to experience it.
Did you drag a piano outdoors for that?
No, the gift shop worker did.
Really? Oh, electronic keyboard?
It was a piano.
Oh, wow. Okay. And what are some of your best memories of that venue and that day?
I think the best part of the venue was that it was a place that was absolutely spectacular in a national park, which we adored. And another part that we just loved was having our families meet each other and spend several days together experiencing each other and the beauty of the national park.
Now, obviously, did you write the actual vows yourselves?
We did write most of the vows. We took some of the information, some of the vows from a Unitarian book of wedding ceremonies.
Okay, and obviously you dedicated your lives to each other. I assume that was part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is something else you've dedicated your life to or hope to someday?
I think we just continued the tradition of dedicating ourselves to our families and growing our families, supporting our families, as well as teaching our families and our children to enjoy the outdoors and national parks, and that's something we continue to believe in today.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you for being our guest, and have a great summer.
All right. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Let's hear what some others had to say.
K-Pro holds a special place in our hearts, as it was at this very spot that 5 years ago we took our wedding vows. We've dedicated ourselves to each other in trying to make a positive impact on others while being stewards of the land. While the breadth and majesty of this landscape reminds us just how small we are, our individual contributions and actions matter. Thank you, Grand Canyon, for offering us such important reminders. We will continue to return here each time in awe.
At this point, among many others, I dedicate myself to the miracle that came into my life, my best friend and wife. Every day she shows me how beautiful life is if we look for it.
What a beautiful place to celebrate a marriage ceremony. We celebrated our 40th anniversary at the North Rim this year, so I can say we dedicated our lives to each other. Living life with your favorite person is a great adventure. Here's to many more adventures to come.
My wife and I have been together for many years, and the quote that we live by is, always be each other's cheerleader. The world may try to bring us down, but you need that one special person to lift you up every single day.
Visiting 23 years after our wedding, after which we took a road trip honeymoon that included our first trip to the North Rim. Hopefully we have 23 plus years to go, dedicated to protecting nature and wildlife, in addition to more adventures.
So we've heard from Lori about her awesome Grand Teton wedding, but I know we have a special wedding also here. Doug, can you tell us about your unique Grand Canyon wedding?
Thank you. Yes, I did get married at the Grand Canyon. I'm really proud of that. What a way to start your married life, right on the rim of the canyon. It wasn't on the North Rim, it was on the South Rim, a place called Shoshone Point, and I think I sent away for a national park permit. I think it was $75 or $100 at the time, and they gave us the key to the gate. It's a 1 mile unpaved road to the canyon rim to get to the picnic area at Shoshone Point. And at that time, which was 1984, there was no shelter. I don't think there were restrooms. I think there were a couple picnic tables, a couple of trash cans, and that was about it. Our wedding was small. We had less than 50 people, but we did have folks from Florida, Ohio, family from Massachusetts, Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, and California all converged to help me and my bride, Donna, start our married life together. Since there wasn't an altar, and we had some seniors, so I didn't go all the way out to the Rocky Point, but we picked a point right on the canyon rim that was a little bit more accessible for the seniors. I took a metal trash can, took the liner out of it from the park surface. I turned it upside down right on the rim, and that was our official altar, where I put a Navajo rug on it. We put a cassette tape so we could record the ceremony, and it had a double neck Pueblo-style wedding vase sitting on our altar. Both my sisters were there. They performed some live music, some songs that they had written. I solicited my uncle from Ohio, who is clergy, a Methodist clergy. He volunteered to come out and do a non-denominational service for it, but he did have to check with the county and make sure his license would be good so he could sign our marriage license that I got in Flagstaff at the county courthouse. And once he realized that he could perform the ceremony, then we put it all together, and it was a grand day. In fact, tomorrow is the actual anniversary day of the June 7th when we got married out on the rim. You know, it's kind of cliche people to say wedding, getting married is the best day of your life, but I feel that way. It was one of the best days of my life to commit to a life partner, to finally find somebody you're compatible with and you feel like you want to spend their whole life with. It's a blessing if you can find somebody like I was able to find to be your life partner. My wife comes from a Buddhist tradition. I came from a Protestant tradition. So I asked my uncle to come up with a non-denominational kind of a generic wedding ceremony, which he did. Did a great job. We contributed, my wife and I did. And after the ceremony was over, then my wife and I drove all the way to the North Rim, and we spent our first married life together as a married couple in a cabin right here at the North Rim of Grand Canyon National Park. So besides a formal declaration as a wedding ceremony is to dedicate your life to your partner, I also wanted to dedicate my life to trying to honor my mom and dad. I was very fortunate to have some of the best parents that you could have, for role models, for teaching good values, and I wanted to dedicate myself to transmitting those values on and showing respect and honoring my mom and dad. So I felt like I wanted to be as good a husband and a father as my father was for me as a role model, and I just wanted to be a good person in this relationship. And then I also was already working in my park career. My wife was a former ranger at the Grand Canyon and elsewhere, so I wanted to continue my park career. I feel very fortunate to still be living the dream, working in the park career today.
Thank you, Doug, for sharing your story and reflections. Let's hear what else people contributed.
I hope to one day be confident in who I am and to not apologize for following my bliss.
Being a 5-year breast cancer survivor, I realize we are all on borrowed time. I always wanted to do a cross-country trip. It was always going to be someday. I realized that I can always get another job, have a relationship, but I cannot get more time. So I no longer wait for someday. I learned to do it anyway. I am currently in month 9, a year-long solo trip on way back from Alaska, started in Florida, headed to Mexico. I am living my life while I am alive.
I want to keep exploring all around the world, listen to stories, and share mine. I want to always remember that you have to live in the moment and be grateful for it.
What will it be like to go back home? I'm not sure, but I think that we're strong enough to figure out it this time around.
I'm almost 2 years clean and sober now, doing things I never would have thought possible. Now, a road trip across the West with a friend. I'm calm and present and finding bits of joy. Little Julie is every day. I dedicate myself to this always. The growing, the loving, the coming to know myself. There is so much world to see, so much love to have. If only I let myself. Julie is all those beautiful, serendipitous moments that keep us going.
On a 10-week road trip with my best friend, Ohio to Texas. After so many beautiful moments, a new flip phone, and a newfound love of mule deer, I am happy to say that I am dedicating my life to desire, both honoring mine and journey to reach it.
Giving every day an honest shot to be the best day ever, to make a difference, to be a better version of myself.
Parks and natural spaces are really great places for self-reflection and introspection, and I found it really interesting to hear how people have grown and changed over time and how they've decided to live their lives. A lot of these quotes and entries had little bits about finding joy and appreciating joy and what's around you. And some other entries leaned a little bit more towards that joy and fun. So let's hear what they had to say.
My birthday, so as I turn 47, I hereby dedicate my life to pure chaos and joy and adventure. XOXO, leave no trace, unless the NPS says it's okay.
Visiting all of the amazing national parks, choosing to be happy and eat burritos every day.
We want to dedicate ourselves to finding awe every day. Grand Canyon is the ultimate awe-some, but our world is full of awe, big and small. We just need to pay attention to it.
Our world really is big and small, depending on the scale that you're looking at. And a lot of folks reflected on community and care and loving and learning at all kinds of different scales, whether it's the world, the big picture, or just in everyday life. So let's hear some of those reflections.
Sounds trite and sadly, possibly unrealistic, but how about world peace?
I hope to be a source of love to the earth and her creatures, especially those most vulnerable. Grateful to be alive.
Service. As a partner, mother, grandmother, and ER nurse of over 30 years, may I always find the joy and strength in serving others. Right now I am doing it on the Navajo Nation and feel blessed to be welcomed by the natives, to find peace within myself and heal others with the care and grace that every person deserves. The Grand Canyon heals me every time, knowing there is something bigger than us all.
I hope that when people meet me, they know that they are loved.
I've always wanted to make the world a better place, even if it's just for one person or if it's just for a moment.
I want to always have a kind heart that strives to make someone's day better. I also want to experience all the joy life has to offer.
I hope that one day I'm able to make a true difference, whether in my community or just for one individual. I'd love to work in the field of ecological restoration or preservation one day. Just something to give back to our world and preserve the good karma left in this world.
As we start to conclude here, I do have 2 more surprises for you all. But first, thank you to everyone who engaged with the notebook and prompt last year out at the wedding site. Thank you for sharing your stories and all the ways that you've committed to things, what you care about, the ways that you've grown. It was really wonderful to be able to see all of those different responses and then work on this podcast and share that with other people. Thank you to all of the visitors and other people here at Grand Canyon that read out those responses from the notebook and contributed to this podcast. Thank you to Ranger Doug for really motivating this project, coming up with the idea of turning those notebook responses into a podcast and making it super fun along the way, and also for sharing your story about getting married here at Grand Canyon. And also thank you to Ranger Lori for sharing your wedding story as well.
We gratefully acknowledge the Native people on whose ancestral lands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today. Thanks for sharing your homeland with us and being good stewards of the land.
We have one last quote here for you all, and I'm curious, what is something you have dedicated your life to or hope to one day?
We're all on a hero's journey, but we have to remember the cast of characters that help us along this journey. Those who lift us up or give us challenges. It's how we learn that gives us courage to enjoy life. With all the love in the universe.
To close us out here, we've got a special last surprise. A parody song. Sorry to the Grateful Dead, but we've got Rangers Doug, Ranger Han, Ranger Houston to sing us out. Thanks everyone for listening today, and we hope to see you at Grand Canyon soon.
Our life will be good. It's like a
Wow.
Grand Canyon, where hidden forces shape our
ideas, beliefs, and experiences.
Join us as we uncover the stories
between the canyon's colorful walls. Probe the depths and add your voice.
Add your voice for what happens
next at Grand Canyon.
At Grand Canyon.
Hello and welcome.
Okay. This is Jesse.
This is Emily.
And this is
This is Behind the Scenery.
So here we are, sitting at the bottom of Grand Canyon, surrounded by Vishnu schist and Zoroaster granite. And most people, when they come to Grand Canyon National Park to visit, they immediately have questions about the geology. Today, someone asked me, what's all that green rock? How would you answer that?
Yeah, so that green rock is the Bright Angel shale layer. The depositional environment for the sediment, when it lays down, it has to be able to form glauconite. So glauconite is the reason that it's green. But what's interesting about that layer for a lot of people is that it's rich with fossils. And when you're hiking across it or moving across it, there's a lot of worm tracks and tunnels, and you can find trilobite track fossils out there pretty regularly as well. And when you're actually on that layer and looking at it, there's often a lot of different colors that you can see because of that shallow sea depositional environment that was present.
What other questions do you get on the trail about geology?
I get a lot of questions about how old things are. Like, how old is this rock that we're standing on?
When people ask me that, I usually just tell them they're really old and that some are older than others. But another nice answer is that the newest rocks are on the top and they are 270 million years old. And then the oldest rocks are at the very bottom and they are between 1.8 and 1.6 billion years old. So we've got a whole spectrum here. Kate, can we find any dinosaur fossils here?
The layers here at Grand Canyon predate all of the dinosaurs. So on the very top layer, we see some sharks. And we found shark tooths and things like that. But a lot of the fossils that we find in Grand Canyon are other marine life. So we have a lot of trilobite fossils. We have shell fossils. We have different plant fossils that we can find in the canyon, like ferns. And then we also have fossilized tracks of different animals that actually predate what we currently think of reptiles. So Kaylee, are these the same rocks that we see at Zion here in Grand Canyon?
Oh yeah, were you just at Zion National Park?
Yeah. Sorry. I can't even lie when it makes sense to lie.
Yeah, a lot of people come from Zion to the North Rim. So often people are comparing their experience to their experience at Zion. And it's an interesting question to answer because the rocks in Grand Canyon are completely different than the rocks that you see at Zion, in Zion Canyon, at Zion National Park. But the very bottom layer of the Zion Canyon rocks is the very top layer of Grand Canyon's rocks. So Zion is essentially stacked on top of Grand Canyon, and that's because they're all part of the Grand Staircase kind of geologic formation. So you can even see the full staircase from some parts of the Kaibab Plateau. Yeah, it's hard to remember common questions that people ask about geology because we've worked in the canyon for a couple of seasons, and when people are hiking in the canyon, the questions are usually about where's the next water station? How do I fix my blisters? How do I hike out of here with success? And how might I survive the day? But the cool thing is all those questions do relate to geology. The geology of Grand Canyon determines every part of a hiker's day down here. Sometimes at the end of a workday at Phantom Ranch, some of the rangers find themselves on the porch eating dinner, and sometimes we talk for hours about our favorite rock layers in Grand Canyon. And there's a lot of funny stories and experiences and emotions that are attached to different rock layers in Grand Canyon for different people.
Inspired by these porch talks, we decided to go around and ask our coworkers and friends what is their favorite geologic layer here at Grand Canyon and why.
My name is Ranger Doug. I'm a second-year summertime seasonal ranger at the North Rim of Grand Canyon National Park. My job is to meet and greet the public, answer questions, hand out information.
So my question for you is, what is your favorite layer here at Grand Canyon?
Geologic layer?
Geologic layer.
My favorite is the Coconino because it's so distinctive. I can point it out to folks at our outdoor visitor center. It's prominently seen there. Last night I was out at the veranda behind the North Rim Lodge watching the sunset, and somebody asked where the village was in the Bright Angel Trail. And you can actually see the offset of the Coconino where the Bright Angel Fault has uplifted the west side. And that's kind of a landmark that I look for trying to find where the trail goes in and out of the canyon, as well as the
the village area just to the east of where the coconino's been offset. So that's my favorite layer.
My name is Matthew Baldwin. I work in the backcountry office out of the Flagstaff office, and we issue river permits and backcountry permits and patrol the backcountry. My favorite rock layer here at Grand Canyon is going to be the Coconino Sandstone, because when you're hiking out from the bottom of the canyon, it means you're almost home. And just those big, beautiful white cliffs with the cross bedding and the sandstone, it's absolutely beautiful. So I lost my hat one time during a blizzard as I was hiking out, and it got blown off a cliff, and it was just gone. So if you ever near the South Kaibab Trail and you look over a cliff and you happen to see a green hat, it's mine. Bring it back, please.
How many miles of under the rim Grand Canyon hiking have you done, just so we know that like this is really the best and the worst layers?
Overall or at one time?
Whatever number you have.
It would be impossible to say how many. If I had to estimate, it's probably upwards of in the 20,000 range. Well, the Esplanade is an easy favorite for so many reasons. It just feels like a different planet, really. It really, I feel like, paints an amazing picture of the people who lived there before us, because it was a very common layer for them to live in, much like the Peats.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Esplanade just got so much history and just so much beauty. And it's really like nothing else in the canyon. Maybe somewhat comparable to parts of the Supai. You can get some sections of the Supai, particularly at its ends, that are very, very similar. But Esplanade is just amazing. To me, it just feels like walking on Mars. Like just a whole untouched planet.
Is it like also because it's easy to walk on? Like is that part of it, you think?
Actually, it's really not easy at all. It's actually a lot of switch leveling and upping and downing. And, one of the challenges of the Esplanade is that, there's a ton of cryptobiotic soil. And it can be very difficult to avoid the crypto. Like very difficult. Yeah. So it gets very tedious. Now, if you don't care about cryptobiotic soil, yes, it would be easy walking. Mm-hmm. But if you're, protecting the canyon, as we all do, it's a lot of sidestepping and rerouting and switch leveling. And then you might be going on a level and it gives out. And now you have to scramble up slick rock, which can be challenging as well.
Yeah, my name is Michael Witchman. I'm a backcountry guide for the Wildland Trekking Company. I've been doing so for going on 13 years now. Work for a couple other companies as well, but Wildland's my primary gig. I often say that this is a difficult place to have favorites in because every layer's got their own story to tell with different chapters at each different location that they appear in the Grand Canyon. Off the top of my head, I typically say the red wall limestone is my favorite layer for several reasons. One, it has the most karst-like systems in it, the most caves. Limestone's very porous, and water tends to percolate through it. And so we get beautiful cave structures. The condors tend to like to roost in those caves, just laying their eggs there with the fledglings' first flight coming off the huge red wall limestone. It can be 1,000 feet thick at times in certain places. Also, most of the water features tend to, like the waterfalls and such, tend to occur at the bottom of the red wall when the water that seeps through tends to hit the impermeable shale, Red Angel shale below it. So I love the red wall. My other thought as I was talking about this is if I get to pick two, the Chuar formation over up in the Lava Chuar Canyon area, kind of up by Ankar Delta, further upriver than here. It gets really beautiful teals and turquoise, like beautiful wavy U-shaped features in it. And it's a more unusual layer that you only see in that area. So I've only ever seen it on a few river trips, and by foot only twice. Once my partner and I, we hiked from Nankoweap to Phantom off route, and that was one of the highlights of that trip. The red wall, for its commonality, or how often you see it. And so every time that we're out here guiding or hiking personally, you're almost always going through the red wall. And so it's fun to see the different ways that it takes shape and the different members of it, seeing the coral bed fossils and whatnot inside it. So it's nice to see the red wall as often as we see it.
My name is Jesse Barden. I am the North Rim Interpretation Seasonal Supervisor, and I've been at the canyon for like 6 years now. But the ones that stand out to me the most are the red wall and the Muav limestone layers. They're kind of stacked right on top of each other, and I think they're just like they do the coolest things. They have all the cool caves. They have all the cool slot canyons. The Muav has all the flowing water, and not all of the flowing water, but most of the major springs comes out of the Muav. Yeah, they're both just so excellent. Memory of a route through the red wall. It's called the Red Slide route, and it's probably the first like really challenging off trail route that I've done in the canyon. And me and my friend Darren were on a river trip, and he and I decided to do this canyoneering route down in western Grand Canyon. And so we climbed up the Red Slide route to get to the canyon, and the route description was only a few sentences. And it said, look for these things. You'll find some hoodoos. It's a little bit scrambly. Made no mention of the fifth class climbing that we'd have to do on the way up. So we started our trip at about 6 a.m. In the dark. It was January, so it was pretty dark for a while. And we made our way slowly up this really steep slope, and it's all like crumbly rocks, barely held together, like kind of like pebble sized, it seemed like. And so at many of the points going up the first bit, we were on all fours, like using our hands, using our feet. And then we get to the top of this big kind of debris cone, and we're just sort of looking around and looking at each other, like trying to figure out where the route goes, because we're really just hoping that we don't have to go up the 15-foot vertical cliff that's right in front of us. And then Darren spots a cairn at the top of that cliff, and we're like, guess we have to go up there. And so, yeah, there ended up being 3 or 4 of those kinds of like short, fairly easy climbing, but like unprotected and fairly high consequence, like cliff bands that we had to navigate with heavy packs. And it was a tremendous relief when we finally got through that red wall section into the Supai, where the walking is pretty easy.
I'm Jeff Caton. I'm one of the lead interpreters on the North Rim.
You're the lead interpreter.
I am the lead interpreter, yes. The only one. My favorite geologic layer is the Bright Angel Shale for a couple silly reasons. One reason is I like the way it sounds when it crunches under my boots. A weird reason, but I like the way it sounds. Another reason is when it was the second time I came to the Grand Canyon, it was a backpacking trip that went not terribly wrong, but pretty wrong. I got sick. I ignored everything the rangers said. Like, I went out of my way to just check off, and not do what the rangers said to not do. And I woke up and I was sick. This isn't good. And I remember the sound of it under my boots. I stopped maybe at Salt Creek. So I stopped somewhere for the hot part of the day. And then about 3 or 4, I started hiking again. There were a few clouds, and I probably started throwing up. So I remember that, the sound of the Bright Angel under my boots, and kneeling on it to puke several times.
My name's Elissa Shalla, and I'm a park ranger here at Grand Canyon. My favorite geologic layer is by far the Tapete Sandstone. I think it just being able to look at and touch and see all of those sediments in that layer gives you the opportunity to really kind of transform yourself back in time and think about all the different ancient landscapes that the canyon has been throughout its lifespan. When I think of the Tapeats, I think of all of the years that I worked down at Indian Garden as a ranger and all of the times we went down into the Tapeats Narrows, getting to talk with people that were just excited to be down there, some people that were struggling to get through that section and up to the Indian Garden campground. I think it's packed with beauty and suffering.
Behind the Scenery is brought to you by the interpretation team at Grand Canyon National Park. We gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their home here today.
Hey, this is Jesse. On this episode of the podcast, we're featuring an interview with retired Grand Canyon Wilderness Coordinator Mike Kearsley. The interview was recorded by Desert View Rangers Don Thompson and Melissa Panter. You'll also hear from Science and Resource Management Deputy Chief Sarah Haas at the very end of the episode. Enjoy.
Grand Canyon, where hidden forces shape our
Ideas, beliefs, and experiences.
Join us as we uncover the stories
between the canyon's colorful walls. Probe the depths
and add your voice.
Add your voice for what happens
next at Grand Canyon.
At Grand Canyon.
Hello and welcome. Okay.
This is Jesse.
This is Emily.
And this is...
This is Behind the Scenery.
My name is Mike Kearsley. Now I am retired from the Park Service. I do still work a little bit. I work for the Rhodes Scholar Program at MAU, doing hikes with people, showing them the Grand Canyon, Organ Pipe, Saguaro, other places like that. And before that, I worked in the Resource Management Division at Grand Canyon. I started working there in 2007, was brought on to do the vegetation map. I coordinated the vegetation mapping of the park and parts of Lake Mead that were part of Grand Canyon Parashant National Monument. And after that ended in 2012, I worked on the backcountry management plan. I did mostly impacts analysis and affected environment writing, that kind of thing. And then in 2016 became the wilderness coordinator and and actually became a permanent employee in 2019. And as a wilderness coordinator, one of the duties was working on soundscapes questions, along with minimum requirements analyses, impacts analysis, backcountry campsite monitoring, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So for most people listening, they might not know what a soundscape is. So, would you want to explain what that is and what that means?
It's the acoustic environment that you are in. It is the auditory or acoustic qualities of an area, and it's specific to the area, specific to the time of year.
In my program, I talk about soundscapes, and I'm like, it's inescapable. You're always in a soundscape.
Always in a soundscape.
You're always contributing to it.
It's one of the intangible parts of the environment that you're in. It's like like a smell, like aroma.
So when you were studying soundscapes at the Grand Canyon, what exactly were you studying or looking for?
We were mostly doing compliance monitoring for overflights. Overflights are limited to certain parts of the park, and the reason for doing is that they want to limit the amount, the total area of the park that is exposed to aircraft noise more than a certain percentage of the day.
Right.
And so we had our listening stations set up underneath these air tour corridors. So that was the primary reason for monitoring soundscapes.
Yeah. When you're talking about like a listening station, like what do you like describe that to me?
Okay. It's a setup that has two components. One of them is just an audio recorder, a digital audio recorder that records the sounds. And it's paired with a sound pressure level meter that's a little more technical. It does more or less the same thing, but it breaks the sounds into intervals of the sound spectrum that are 1/3 octave tall or 1/3 octave broad. And for each of those intervals of the spectrum, it says it records how much sound pressure there is, the loudness of that sound pressure. So there's those two things: microphones, a solar panel, a big battery pack, and usually we would put a wildlife camera out just in case there was something that was happening that we picked up on the acoustic recording and didn't understand what was making it. We could look at that. We recorded some really interesting wildlife stuff. Trespass livestock coming through, horses destroying the solar panels and turning over all of our buckets. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I think on the sound drive there's a audio of elk licking the foam off of like a SM4, which is pretty funny.
Yep. What is that sound? Well, now we needed a way to understand what that sound was.
So wait, were you like manning these like listening stations, or were they, like you put them up and then wow?
When they first started putting them out in the early 2000s, it was part of the air tour management plan that they were putting together. They would do attended listening just to verify what it was that they were hearing on the recordings. But for the most part, no, you just set it up, recorded an audio timestamp. You look at your GPS. What's the GPS time? In 3, 2, 1, clap. It's 11:05. And so that way you can synchronize the acoustic recording with the sound pressure level meter. So I mean, that was, but then you walk away and you don't come back until either you need to service it or you want to download a week's worth of stuff. But yeah, there's very little. We did very little attended listening.
Right on. I was just imagining like a couple of scientists like sitting out, just like really quiet for as many hours.
Yeah.
And so you were under the flight corridors.
Yeah.
And are these like air tours?
Air tours, right. There are specific areas where the air tours are supposed to fly. There's one over by Desert View at Zuni Point. It goes right over Zuni Point, goes north. There's another one that comes south that goes over the Dragon. It's a peninsula off of the North Rim and goes over, I think it's Boucher use area west of Hermit's Rest. And then east-west, that one goes back from the southern end of that. It goes back to the Tucson Airport. At the north end, the Zuni corridor turns west and goes across the North Rim, just north of the basin.
Did you have stations like all throughout that?
No, just at the southern end of the Zuni corridor and the Dragon corridor, and then we'd set one up in the basin to catch those 3 points, because those are more or less the places where we saw the most activity, and it's also where you're going to intercept most of the traffic. So.
Yeah. Just because it's my personal curiosity.
Yeah.
And I think I'd asked you this before. Was that affecting wildlife? And if it was, in like what ways? Or
before the air tours were required to fly 1,000 feet above the rim, and before these air tour corridors were established, they could fly anywhere. And they would typically drop over the rim and fly around below the rim. And of course, you want to see things, and pilots like to point out wildlife. And there was a grad student at NAU whose master's thesis showed that when a herd of bighorn was kind of harassed, if that's the word, by an air tour, it stressed them out. They didn't have as many offspring. They didn't have as many young. And they were moving around. So that's after the change to the air tour corridors, that was much reduced. And by putting them up above the rim, I think that also reduced the amount of impacts on wildlife.
Totally. Yeah, I think when Sarah and I were talking, you had like described it like the Wild West of the skies, like before they had the corridors, which
yeah,
I think that boggles my mind.
When I was 12 years old, I flew from Williams over the rim, and the pilot dropped us down in and flew us all around. Our car broke down in Williams on a big cross-country trip, and that was our way of wasting time while the parts for a Volkswagen bus came up from Phoenix. And
wow.
they actually, the pilot flew us all over the place. And the whole time he was saying, keep your eye out. My buddy so-and-so is up here too, and I don't know where he is. So there was another pilot flying down around below the rim. And it was a source of anxiety for sure while we were flying.
Wow. Dang.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so different now.
Very different. Yeah. And much more popular. I mean, there's a lot more flights now than there were then. And if you're in Boucher, it's really insane because they're right on top of you the whole time.
I can imagine that would like affect a visitor's or like just anyone's like personal experience if they have like all these flights going overhead.
Right.
When you were studying soundscapes with interns and stuff, like was anything like that measured or like?
No, that took place mostly in a lot of those interviews and studies took place in the early 2000s. They would set up, all across the south and north rims. They recorded in many different places to find out, what was the impact. And we were just specifically focused on the air tour corridors.
So I know you had talked about some like interns, like when you had interns.
Oh yeah.
Were there any interns who like inspired you or that you learned from, or?
There were a number of them. That was one of the joys of my job, was working with interns who were fresh out of college or out of their master's degree and excited about the work. And the first two we had were Maggie and Hannah, who basically resurrected the program. I had been given the program, which had been dormant since probably 2010, and this is 2017. They found the gear, they got it working, they contacted the regional people from Natural Sounds and Night Skies who came out and helped them put it together, show them how to do it. And basically they set up the program based on what they were trained with. We had somebody come out and do training of the analysis, training of the gear setup, troubleshooting, and because the gear was so old, they got very good at repairing things. You wouldn't think working in resource management you'd learn to solder, but they were all really, really good at soldering by the time they were done. So they were awesome and enthusiastic and ready to go. And actually Hannah works here. She's the hydrologist. She's a physical scientist by training, was a hydrologist and got her master's in hydrology, but did this because it was interesting to her. Who else? Belen was another all-star. She was a funny person who was not trained in soundscape. She was a physicist. She worked on small particle physics and had spent time at the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland, and only came to do this because the pandemic happened and she couldn't travel back there. And she was really good at coding. She was a coder, and part of the issue I have is that I am not a coder. I don't understand digital audio files and how to manipulate them. And she took this project on and kind of moved us away from the compliance end of things to looking at the broader questions about soundscapes. I think when we talked on the phone, we talked about acoustic complexity. Complexity comes when you get multiple elements. Think about songbirds in the morning, and their sounds change very rapidly. So 1 minute, 1 second to the next, or 1 10-second interval to the next, the sounds you hear are very different. The pitch is different, the duration is different, the loudness is different. All those elements go into the idea of complexity. And in an area that just has natural sound, the acoustic environment is more complex because you don't hear the same thing over and over again. In areas where it's dominated by human sounds or it's unpopulated, there really is no complexity there. It's very monotonous. Helicopters going over, they sound the same, for the 2 minutes you can hear them. But, a towhee or something is a very complex song, and it's, when you break it down, it has a lot of different elements. So the idea is that a complex acoustic environment is one that has a lot of natural sounds and not man-made sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And she got locked into that. There was a study going on at Sequoia Kings Canyon, long-term study, where they were looking at acoustic complexity in areas that had burned and not burned, and asking, is this, or burned in areas that had been managed for fire and areas that had not been managed for fire. So, big wildfire versus a controlled burn kind of a thing. And she got interested in that question and sort of moved by writing code that would do the analysis. She got the program sort of moved in that direction. And the third one was Maddie Chudzik. That's right. She came to us from the listening lab. The Park Service works with Colorado State University to do analysis for parks, soundscape analysis for parks that don't have somebody on site, the expertise locally to do it. And she worked in that lab for all 4 years of her undergrad. It was an REU thing, a work study program. And by the time she was done, she was actually running the lab because the lab manager had moved away. He moved on to something else. And so when she came, she brought all of this knowledge about how the Park Service does these studies, and didn't need my minimal instruction. In fact, it's probably a hindrance. And she got everything organized, looked back at the old data we had. It was a skill she had that, she understood the analysis, what the data was, and how to do the standard analysis. And so she went back at a couple of stations and did a historical comparison across time. So yeah, those were 3 wonderful people I got to work with.
Wow.
Exciting people to work with.
That's so inspiring. I feel like I love the acoustic complexity.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be so cool to study and learn about.
And yeah, we tried to set up a study comparing areas that had controlled burns before and after, and with an adjacent control site. But they never burned. Never. I mean, it was too dry for the 2 years that I was there, and then I think they did burn them last year.
Yeah. Melissa also had a couple of questions, and the question is what makes the soundscape whole or complete?
Complete, I think, is when it's not dominated by human-caused sounds. I mean, overflights, vehicles, the intangible version of an undeveloped area, where you don't have buildings, you don't have roads. You look at that and you say, oh, this is complete, this is intact. And the same way for a soundscape, you don't hear a bus going by, or a helicopter, or an aircraft, or a jet overhead. That's what an intact soundscape would be. And it's not necessarily that there's sounds there. I mean, sometimes there's nothing there. So
when you're like listening to a soundscape, other than when you're like listening to study something, how are you personally impacted by soundscapes?
I find it calming. You focus. It's like when you're doing a math problem or something that you're focused on. It's you're using these other tools to study. It makes me calm when I'm trying to experience or trying to record in my own head what's going on around me.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
No, yeah, totally. No, yeah, in my soundscape program, I talk about like noise, how noise impacts humans, and how it's like only second to air pollution is like the most harmful.
Oh, really? That's good to know.
Yeah, which I thought was just interesting, and because it's not something we normally think about.
And did you find the study, the visitor use study, where they say that the number one reason for visiting Grand Canyon is to experience the sounds of nature? We belong to the Conservancy, and we got the most recent. They have a little magazine that comes out a couple times a year, and one of the articles in there was talking about why people come to Grand Canyon. They listed first soundscapes.
Yeah.
So, it was gratifying.
Yeah, so important. Sometimes we don't even think about it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that intangible quality that you need, right?
Yeah, I do a couple pop-ups where I ask people like, where's the quietest place they have been?
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Some people will say the Grand Canyon, just in comparison to where they've been.
Right.
But some fun answers I've also gotten was scuba diving and Antarctica.
Antarctica. That's a good one.
But yeah, it's just interesting to compare to see like where people are coming from, because I think Grand Canyon is kind of a noisy place, or like
it is when you're at the South Rim. I mean, that's when you compare the South and North Rims. It's much less busy on the North Rim, and there's places that you can walk to that aren't quite as busy. I mean, Mather Point, sure, you can see Grand Canyon, but it's really busy. I was thinking about this after we talked, and I was thinking, there's camps, river camps. There's Schist Camp on the river. There's Ledges Camp that are just incredibly quiet. There's no rapids. You're not near a flight corridor, so you're not going to get the air tours in the morning and evening. You'll still hear jets, but they are remarkably quiet, really, really quiet. But you'll still hear, at Ledges, you'll hear a little dripping spring at the way downstream end of camp. But you can have a, indoor voice conversation 50 feet apart from people. It's really cool. Just above Saddle was a research camp we used to go to every year, and in the spring, and it had a bunch of trees in the back and a bunch of vegetation all through, and we had one of the great dawn choruses there, the birds waking up in the morning. It was like, this is, after a while you wanted them to shut up, but I'm up, exactly. I'm awake, I get the message.
What is your hope for soundscapes at the Grand Canyon, or just like in general, like in the world?
I hope my hope for soundscapes would be, the Grand Canyon soundscapes would be that there would be times when there are no air tours overhead. They restrict them to, you can't have air tours before half an hour after sunrise. They can't be out there at sunrise while you're enjoying it, or half an hour before sunset. And, you know, I think the park can promote places that have intact soundscapes. And it would be nice if there were ways to create times when you aren't going to have air tours. I mean, air tours are they're the biggest impact. There's a guy who works for the Sierra Club who wants to have air tour free days, you know, like a Saturday, twice a year. Just no air tours over Desert View, Hermit, whatever, just so people can experience that. And there's more air tours at Grand Canyon than there are. Well, a couple of years ago, this was the fact. More air tours at Grand Canyon than there are in the next 3 NPS units combined. And that's just what comes out of Tucson. That ignores everything that comes out of Grand Canyon West. All the tours that come out of Wallapai. The guess is that it's about the same as it is from Tucson. Very busy, about 50,000 a year. You know, it's really heartening to know that somebody is out there doing interpretation, that someone is bringing this to people's attention, because it isn't something you think about, and it isn't something visitors think about. Sure, they say we're here to experience the sounds of nature, but I think you only appreciate that either after the fact or when it's happening to you. So
right, and like these natural soundscapes are just becoming harder and harder to find.
Harder to find. There are. I was just reading in Japan. They have the 100 soundscapes of Japan. They have designated places where you can go to hear an intact soundscape.
I guess what can visitors and other people listening do? How can they positively impact the soundscape for Grand Canyon?
I think that by focusing on it, you know, even if it's just going to the rim and sure you get your view of the rim, close your eyes and listen, you know, and maybe you'll hear people walking around, but you know, all the other stuff, the sound of the wind, sounds of wildlife. I mean, it's not spring, so you won't hear birds quite so much, but you know, just the sounds around you. Just appreciate that. And if something bothers you, if there is, you know, a something that the park can do to improve, to make the soundscape more intact, don't need to have buses idling. We don't need to have, you know, any sort of other amplified sounds. Then write a letter to the park. The park actually, it goes to the superintendent's office, and generally it gets forwarded to whatever division is responsible. But you know, if the planning division had to start thinking about how to preserve the natural sounds of the park, that would be a great thing.
Yeah.
You know, So, and it only comes from the public.
I have a just thought that last night I was talking to our coworkers. We had Aaron White performing. He's a Native American
flute player. Yeah.
And I'm really sad I wasn't there. Were you there?
Yeah.
He was saying there was a moment where he was like, I don't get to watch the sunset sometimes. So he turned the whole audience around.
Made to watch the
where
sun.
he played towards the canyon.
Oh, nice.
And I'm curious, like, you know, the like soundscapes, we're talking about like natural soundscapes and things like that, but it sounded like that was like a very different soundscape where people were connecting in a very different way by listening and being in that space. And I'm curious, like, how do, like, not just natural sounds, but maybe like sounds that are always in the canyon or meant to be in the canyon, that are human, like, how do those play a role into this science too? Because I think that's a big aspect of like balancing like natural versus like human, but it's also like, well, humans have been here since time immemorial, so how do those intermingle, where it's like maybe we're talking more like natural versus like automotive or like
mechanical. Yeah, the Wilderness Act talks about the difference between, unimproved and, not affected by modern mechanical and mechanized and motorized stuff. And yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, there's like, how do we keep encouraging these like human sounds that are connected to the canyon,
right?
That bring us as humans also closer to one another, but then to space.
Yeah.
How cool to hear a flute,
right?
Those inspirational human sounds that are unaffected or not affected much by mechanical sounds and overflights and just conversation, but kind of the best of what humanity has to offer as far as music and inspiration and things that do connect you to nature. Those can also be a really important part of the experience and the soundscape too. But it is different when it's like, you're still hearing cars and slamming doors and people walking around and honking things versus if you're in a place that can really support that experience with nature and experience with human artistry.
The Behind the Scenery podcast is brought to you by the interpretation team at Grand Canyon National Park. A huge thanks to Mike and Sarah for sharing their experiences and perspectives. We gratefully acknowledge the Native peoples on whose ancestral homelands we gather, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make their
Section 1.